Hi guys, it's me, Kazner HD, and welcome to race day for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, race 5 of the 2025 Formula 1 season. And what a grid we have for this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. I was thinking this weekend would not quite be as good as last weekend and last weekend's race. Last weekend's race was probably the race of the season, start to finish. But with the grid we've got here in Jeddah, it's looking like we could have yet another great race. We've also got quite a bit softer tyres, which could enable some alternate strategies to happen in this Grand Prix. But yeah, with the mixed up grid we've got 4 different constructors in the top 4 positions. It is going to be, I'm sure, a at least good race in Saudi Arabia. Many fights throughout the field, the fight for the win, which really could be between 2 or 3 different drivers, and then the fight for the rest of the top 10. You know, it should be pretty close, pretty competitive the whole way throughout the 50 laps. So cannot wait to get into this today. And as you can see, we've got just under 2 hours to go until the race begins in Jeddah. We'll get into, of course, the starting grid soon enough. And as usual, we'll go through what happened yesterday and why we have the starting grid we do and why it ended up the way it did, looking at the sector time data, the speed traps, all of that stuff. And of course, I'll give my final race predictions ahead of this Grand Prix. Obviously, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think will happen in this Grand Prix today? And as well, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat where I've asked you guys, who do you think will win the Grand Prix today? Will it be Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, or I think the 4th option is Lando Norris? Out of those 4, who wins the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix? You've got just under 2 hours to decide and vote in that poll, so make sure to do so. But in general, hope you guys are well. For the people that celebrate Easter, I hope you're having a great Easter Sunday, and I hope you're having a really great holiday period overall. And I hope you can join me today, this evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world, in watching along and enjoying this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, as we will, of course, take you through it. And good news, even though he said last week he was not able to come on stream, thankfully things have gone his way, and he will be, Niblo, my co-commentator, will be joining me for this Grand Prix. He will be on stream probably in about an hour and 20 minutes from now. So yeah, he will be joining us a decent amount before the race, and then of course me and him will take you through the Grand Prix. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today, and I hope you guys are well and again as excited as I am for what should be a very interesting Grand Prix in Saudi Arabia. And already race 5 of the season, and we're already getting some very exciting grids and exciting races. But let's get into first the results of qualifying and what that means for our starting grid. And here is the top 10 for today's Grand Prix. Max Verstappen somehow put it on pole position, a 1:27.2, 100th of a second ahead of Piastri in the McLaren. Now, Oscar Piastri did not do the best lap he could have done in Q3. There was more pace in that McLaren than what he showed, but at the end of the day, Verstappen produced the goods, and that is why he ended up on pole and why Piastri is second. George Russell then third, only a 10th back on Verstappen, who ended up on pole. Top 3 only separated by a 10th of a second. Very close in the end, and it should be pretty close between the top 3 in the race today. Then Charles Leclerc 4th, a third of a second back from pole, as expected really, but yeah, Ferrari and Leclerc very disappointed after qualifying. Leclerc coming out and saying that, he's not here to fight for 4th place, which of course he's not. And yeah, that's represents his disappointment in just where Ferrari are at. Ferrari are, I think, undoubtedly at this stage, they are the slowest of the front 4 teams in Formula 1 in 2025. And they're going to need to do quite a bit to reverse that. But yeah, Leclerc 4th, that was the best Leclerc could do. There was just no more pace in that car. Antonelli 5th. I don't really think Antonelli could have done any better in terms of position. Maybe could have been closer to Russell on lap time, but I think Antonelli really did the best he could position-wise. 5th on the grid is a good position for him to be. 3rd and 5th for Mercedes is a lot better qualifying result than I was expecting. So yeah, great result for Mercedes and a great grid position. Carlos Sainz, though, 6th, and may very well be the driver of the day from qualifying yesterday to put that Williams on the 3rd row of the grid, and most importantly for himself, out-qualifying the driver that replaced him at Ferrari in Lewis Hamilton, and out-qualifying Hamilton by a few hundredths of a second. So yeah, Carlos Sainz, brilliant job. Obviously, he's not going to maintain 6th in the race today because the Williams doesn't have the pace to do so. But he will probably score points today in what is a strong Williams car. Hamilton, 7th. Another very disappointing qualifying. Over half a second slower than his teammate Leclerc. Just very disappointing from Hamilton. Lewis should have been at least in 6th place. But 7th it was. Yuki Tsunoda 8th. Bit disappointing from Tsunoda as well. He was looking to be only about half a second off the pace of teammate Verstappen until really Q3, where Tsunoda just didn't really deliver on that final qualifying lap. So Tsunoda is another driver that definitely can do better today and will be strong in fighting, Hamilton, Sainz, and maybe even Leclerc, Antonelli. So watch out for Tsunoda. He is a driver not to be counted out. Pierre Gasly 9th. A great result for Gasly. Maybe could have done slightly better to capitalise on Hamilton and Tsunoda ahead, but I think 9th is still good enough. And then Lando Norris, 10th. He will start this race. He crashed at the start of Q3. Threw away the chance at pole position, and the best he can get today realistically is, I think, 3rd place. Even that, though, given how quick Mercedes look, even that is not going to be easy, especially if you're Lando Norris, a driver who is very much not in form right now. So yeah, Lando, that's his aim for today, make the podium, and if he can finish any higher than 3rd, brilliant, but as long as he finishes 3rd, at least that would be a good recovery from a disaster in qualifying. And we could very well see today a change in the championship lead. Lando Norris, remember, 3 points clear of Oscar Piastri coming into this race today. And Max Verstappen is 8 points behind Norris in 3rd. Russell is 14 points behind in 4th. So it is likely, even if Piastri finishes 2nd, it is likely that Lando will lose the lead of the championship today. We will see how that plays out. But yeah, Norris in a desperate position. And then the rest of the order, mostly as expected, going into qualifying. Alex Albon 11th, that was not expected. I thought Williams would get both cars into Q3, but just didn't happen for them. Albon just didn't do quite a good enough lap in the end to make it through. Liam Lawson 12th, the first good result really of the season for Lawson, out qualifying teammate Hadjar by about a quarter of a second nearly. Alonso 13th, doing the best he can in an awful car. Hadjar 14th, Behrman 15th. Haas really scuppered quite a bit by their draggy car, slow car in a straight line, which I'll illustrate later with the speed trap data, really hurting them this weekend. Lance Stroll 16th. Not really much else he could do with that. Doohan 17th, poor effort from him. Hulkenberg 18th, Ocon 19th, poor effort from Ocon. definitely should have done a bit better. And Gabriel Bortoleto last. Obviously, he spun on his final lap in Q1. So that is your grid. The outside of the top 10 is not really mixed up at all, but in the the top 10, it is quite a bit different than we were expecting. I think we were all expecting McLaren at least to get pole, and most of us thought McLaren would take the front row. But yeah, that's what we've got. And no complaints from myself as to this grid. It is I wouldn't say perfect grid, but it is close to it, given who should, in clear air, have the faster cars today. McLaren, in clear air, will have the fastest car, no doubt about it. It's not miles ahead of everybody else. I think they've only got probably on Red Bull and Mercedes 2 to 3 tenths of a second in clear air. But if they can get that clear air, and obviously a Piastri in second, if he can get into the lead as soon as possible, then should be able to gradually pull away. But again, not massively in this race. It isn't a massive gap between him, or not him, but McLaren and the other teams, which really is why we've had such a good weekend so far. But let's go into the sector times, just to understand why it ended up the way it did. And this first sector time is why Max Verstappen got pole. It was just an amazing first sector. A tenth of a second clear of McLaren. Now, the Red Bull car is quick in the high-speed corners. We've seen that all weekend. Saw it at Suzuka. This Red Bull car likes high-speed corners. So it's not a surprise the Red Bull was competitive. But for the Red Bull to be ahead of the McLaren, Max absolutely had something to do with that. That is just an incredible pace through the first part of the lap. And again, that is really what got Verstappen pole. If he wasn't, on this type of pace in the first sector, then Piastri would have got it. Mercedes also good first sector speed, and then a bit of a drop-off to Ferrari, who were disappointing in the first sector. Frederick Vasseur, after qualifying, said Ferrari were really struggling in turn 1 and 2 and losing quite a bit of time through there. And obviously those, turn 1 and 2 is a chicane, slower corners, and the Ferrari does struggle in slower corners. So that's really where the lap time was lost for Ferrari. Excessively bad in the first chicane than really you would expect them to be. They really should have been Ferrari a couple tenths of a second better through this part of the lap. And if they were, maybe Leclerc could have ended up in the top 3, but that's the way it was, unfortunately. And they were barely ahead of Williams. Very good first sector pace, just like they showed on Friday. They've been quick through the first sector all weekend long. Aston Martin, then 6th best team, the only part of the lap where they look decent. And then Racing Bulls, Alpine, Sauber, and Haas. Sauber and Haas a second, pretty much off the pace of Red Bull in just the first sector. Shows you the difference between those two cars. The middle sector, not really separated by much, but Mercedes very strong in this middle part of the lap, nearly a tenth quicker than the next best car of McLaren, tenth and a half quicker than Red Bull, and this really is the part of the lap that pulled in Mercedes to that pole position fight with George Russell. So a brilliant speed through the middle sector. Ferrari, again, lagging behind. Should have been stronger in this part of the lap. And if they were, again, pole position may have been a possibility for them. Albon and the Williams, decent pace. Same for Alpine. And actually same for Haas as well. Aston Martin, a bit of a drop-off. And then Racing Bulls and Sauber at the very back. And then with the final sector, you're pretty much flat out, except for the final corner, which is a very important slow speed corner. And McLaren have been very good in that final corner, and that's why they ended up, in the final sector being the best team. So McLaren, good, speed through that final part of the lap. But again, because Verstappen did such a good first sector, that is why in the end it played out the way it did. So, yeah, it was the first sector, really, that decided it. But Red Bull, very close in there. Ferrari, this is the only really part of the lap where Ferrari actually lapped at a good pace. Again, the other parts of the lap, they just weren't quick enough. Mercedes as well, good pace. Very good pace from Alpine. Less than a tenth off the pace in the final sector. Williams, not too bad. Racing Bulls, not too bad. Haas, not too bad as well, considering their draggy car. And then Sauber and then Aston Martin at the very back. So, yeah, really, in qualifying, and it is usually the case here, the first sector really determines whether you've got a good enough car to have a good enough qualifying. And if you look at the first sector, you know, it's pretty much in order, team by team, of how it ended up, the pecking order for qualifying. Red Bull, then McLaren, then Mercedes, then Ferrari, then Williams. The only difference is Aston Martin did not maintain the good pace in the first sector for the rest of the lap, whilst Alpine got better. Haas as well got slightly better as well. But pretty much for the rest of the field, the pecking order remained the same as it was in just the first sector. So the first sector, so important for pace around this track. And certain teams delivered, certain teams did not. But before we go on to what the pecking order is and should be for this race, let's go on quickly to the top speeds. Now, this speed trap data, I believe, is from the speed trap located right before the final corner, which should be the highest speed part of the lap. Sauber, very good top speed, as we saw to a degree in practice. That is, by the looks of it, why they've been slightly stronger looking at times over the weekend, even though they are 18th and 20th on the grid. Red Bull, very good top speed as usual. Alpine, that is why their top speed being good there, that is why they are in the top 10, and that's why they were so quick in the final sector, because clearly took a bit of wing off their car to be quicker down the straights, and it has worked out for them. So congratulations there. Ferrari, good top speed, but really their issues are in the corners, not in a straight line. Williams' top speed is fine. Same for Racing Bulls. Mercedes, yeah, a few kilometers an hour slower than Red Bull, but that's expected. Same with McLaren as well. But it is interesting to note that Red Bull have an extra 4 kilometers an hour on both Mercedes and McLaren. So do keep that in mind if a Red Bull is within a second of a McLaren with DRS open, because the advantage in straight line speed will be quite big if that does happen. And then Haas, as you can see, the slowest in the speed traps, which again shows just how good their car can be if they were to just eliminate that issue. 6 kilometers an hour slower than the same powered team in Sauber. Obviously, again, both powered by Ferrari. If Haas had that type of top speed that Sauber had in qualifying, then Oliver Behrman would have been close to making probably Q3. So there is more pace in that car, that Haas car, that again just needs to be unlocked as the season goes on. But watch out for Haas. They have been very quick in the races as of late. So they are not to be counted out. But in regards to, as we go back quickly to the top 10 from qualifying, in regards to the pecking order, Red Bull in qualifying, I don't think had the fastest car. They were fast enough to fight for pole, but I don't think, again, they were the quickest. McLaren had the quickest car. The two drivers just didn't quite deliver good enough laps to get pole. And in clear air today, I think McLaren have got the fastest car by, like I said, 2 to 3 tenths of a second. Red Bull and Mercedes, I think, are going to have pretty much the same pace. So as long as Max maintains track position over Russell, Max should be able to keep ahead. And then Ferrari, you've got as definitely the slowest of the front 4 teams. And Ferrari, I think, will be, compared to McLaren in clear air, probably about half a second off the pace of McLaren. So Ferrari are not in a position to fight for the race win and even the podium because, again, Red Bull and Mercedes are too quick for them in clear air. So, yeah, I just don't see Ferrari being strong enough, I'm afraid. And then after that, Williams should be strong enough to finish at the front of the midfield pack. Then Alpine in 6th. And then after that, probably Racing Bulls, maybe, or Haas in 7th. And then the other team in 8th. And then probably Aston Martin 9th. And then Sauber in 10th. But do watch out for Sauber because they may have compromised their qualifying effort to make them very quick down the straights, which might benefit them in the Grand Prix. So do watch out for the Sauber team. So yeah, pecking order wise, it should be, like I said, McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, Williams, Alpine, Haas, Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, and Sauber in that order. We'll see if that does play out that way. But unfortunately, guys, I don't have any long run data to go through from Friday because, annoyingly, some teams did do a few runs on heavy fuel, race simulation runs, but there were then a few other teams that did not do any long runs, such as Mercedes did no long runs on Friday. So that's why I decided not to include the long run pace and data from Friday, because again, there wasn't enough teams really doing enough laps, on the, on, heavy fuel with, the tyres on that probably they're going to use in the race today. So the race pace today should be as it probably usually is. And given all that data, and given obviously what happened in qualifying and where people are on the grid, let me get into my race prediction, my final race prediction for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And I believe Oscar Piastri will win this race. Max Verstappen will be a few seconds behind in second. George Russell, I'm going in third, just behind Verstappen, to claim yet another podium for Russell. That would be 4 podiums in 5 races if he was to get that. Lando Norris will come through the pack, but he will only finish in 4th place. 5th will be Antonelli, 6th Leclerc. Yuki Tsunoda, I'm going in 7th, but with the gap I've gone with there of him being right behind Leclerc, I would now change that. I don't think he'll be right behind Leclerc. I think he'll be closer to Hamilton gap-wise by the end of the Grand Prix. But Tsunoda, I think, will finish in 7th. Lewis Hamilton, I'm going in 8th. Carlos Sainz in 9th. And then Pierre Gasly just behind in P10. Watch out for Alex Albon, by the way, as well. If there is anyone outside of the top 10 to score points today, it will be him, because he has got a fast car and is still driving very well, is Alex in 2025. With Piastri winning, though, the reason I think Piastri will win is because if you compare, when Verstappen was on pole position at Suzuka, a big reason why Max was able to hang on for the race win was because there wasn't really any, or there was only one DRS zone. Now, I know Lando Norris behind Verstappen didn't really ever get in the DRS behind Max. But, even Oscar, he did get within a second of Lando and was never really able to get close enough to overtake, because it is, with only one DRS zone at Suzuka, it is just a bit too hard to overtake, especially if you're not, much faster than the car ahead. Here at Jeddah, we've got 3 DRS zones. So Max can do the best job he can do, but it ultimately will not be enough, because with 3 DRS zones and a McLaren car that is definitely quicker than the Red Bull, that should be enough for Oscar Piastri eventually to pass Verstappen and win the Grand Prix. And that is really why I'm going for Piastri to win. If there was only one DRS zone at this track, like there is at Suzuka, I would probably predict Verstappen to win, just about. But again, 3 DRS zones. I think eventually Piastri gets the move done and wins the race. And remember, this is a crucial race in the championship. Not just because we could get a new leader in the championship, but with Oscar Piastri, he could be the first driver this season to achieve 3 race wins in 2025. He is currently the only driver to win more than 1 race this year. He could, like I said, get on to 3 race wins for the year out of the first 5 races, which would be a big moment in the championship. But for Max Verstappen, if he can somehow hang on for victory, it would also be a big moment for him for his championship bid. So this is a massive race for the championship. Because remember, normally, 99% of the time, the driver who has the most race wins normally wins the championship. So if Piastri can go on to 3 race wins for the year by winning, and everyone else, or the other drivers that have won are still stuck on 1 race win, that is an important gap to have going forward. So again, this is a very important Grand Prix for the championship. Well, that's my prediction for this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Let me know yours in either the poll running in the chat, or you can just put it in text in the chat and I will give it a read, as I'll get the timer back up on screen, as we've got about an hour and a half to go until the race begins. And next up, in a moment, I am going to go through what Pirelli have said is the quickest race strategies for today. Because, of course, strategy important with the 3 softest compounds here at this Grand Prix. So, yeah, keep your comments coming, guys. I will get to them soon enough. Right. So, let me just quickly get up the tweet from Pirelli they normally do, and here you go. And according to Pirelli, they think the fastest strategy today is a 1-stop race, which sadly is normally the case here, even with very soft tyres. Because it's only a 50-lap race, it is very, I wouldn't say very easy, but it is a lot easier to do a 1-stop race here than it is in Bahrain, for example. But according to Pirelli, the 2 quickest 1-stop strategies is either to start on the medium compound tyre, pit between laps 16 and 22, and then go on to a set of hard tyres to finish the race. Or you could start the race on a set of hard tyres, pit between lap 28 and 34, and then obviously finish the race on a set of mediums where you would be very quick. Another option for a 1-stop strategy is if you started on the soft compound tyre, you would then pit between lap 10 and 16, and then finish the race on a set of hard tyres. You'd be struggling at the end of the race, though, on those hard tyres, compared to, fresher rubber out there. And then the only 2-stop option is to start on the medium compound tyre, pit between lap 10 and 16, then go on to a set of hard tyres, pit again between lap 28 and 34, and then finish the race on another set of the hard compound tyres. So it should be a 1-stop race, which again is not a surprise. Apologies, by the way, if you can hear my cat in the background. Absolutely hollering, as he usually does. So, yeah, those are, or that is, rather, the race strategy for today. So yeah, should be a one-stop race. And I will get into, before I bring Niblo on, I will get into what the strategies, what teams should go for, what strategies if they want to enhance their result today. Because there are, I think, definitely certain teams who might want to, try and do something different. I think definitely Lewis Hamilton in 7th on the grid. The last couple races, Hamilton has started on an alternate strategy compared to most of the field. Wouldn't be surprised if he does that again and starts on not even the medium. I think Hamilton probably starts on the hard compound tyre for this race and then tries to go until probably lap, 30 at least, maybe even lap 35 before pitting. So, yeah, we will see. And I'll get into that later on. But for the next, say, 30, 40 minutes, let's get into your comments in the chat. Make sure to keep them coming as well. Make sure to smash the like button. I can see we're already on 28 likes. Let's try and get up to 50 plus likes if we can in the next half an hour. Be great if we could do so. And also Rooks in the chat saying, historically, there is a 100% chance of a safety car, which is not a surprise, obviously, because this is a street circuit. Safety cars are very, very common at street circuit races. So, yeah, we will get a safety car at some point, but we will see, obviously, when that happens. I think last year we had a safety car around lap 15 to 20, I think it was. But it didn't really do anything for the race. So, yeah. We'll have to see when the safety car eventually, does come out. Hello to all of you, by the way. Hope you're all doing well. Deirugara says Lance Stroll has the most ever Q1 eliminations with 75. I don't know if that is true, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is actually a true statistic. Obviously not entirely down to him, but still represents a good reason as to why we don't rate him. And many of us in the community obviously don't rate him. Astro saying in the chat, there's obviously a lot more pace in that Red Bull car than people think. Second fastest car, maybe even the fastest, given Max's pole so far. Pity it's a one-man team, or they'd be able to compete for the constructors. I'm sorry, but you're absolutely wrong. That Red Bull car is not the quickest. No way. Yeah, Max is brilliant. And yeah, the Red Bull car this weekend, I'm not going to say it's been terrible. It's been competitive. It's been probably about the second best car this weekend, but it's not as quick as the McLaren. Absolutely no way. And I think this race will definitely prove that. Even if Verstappen wins, he's going to have Piastri on his back the whole race. So yeah, I don't agree with that. I think Max is doing the absolute best job he can in what is not an absolutely terrible car. It has its weaknesses, as we saw in Bahrain. In those slow, medium speed corners, they really do struggle, especially with the front end. In high speed corners, it's a good car, but it is definitely not the quickest car. It definitely is not. Let's find some other comments here if I can. which isn't to do with tier lists, because obviously we went through that yesterday, talking about all-time greats and all of that stuff. No one that you know says old Lonzo has been washed up for quite some time, yet people deny the truth. I don't think Fernando's at his absolute best, like he was, say 15 years ago, but he's closer to his prime than Lewis Hamilton is to his prime. And yeah, you could say, well, Lewis Hamilton's prime is higher than Fernando's. Probably, but I think Fernando is doing a better job of staying closer to his prime level than Lewis Hamilton is. And Alonso is, 44 later this year. He'll be turning in July, I think it is. So, yeah. Astro gives his prediction for the top 10. Piastri to win from Russell second. Leclerc third. Antonelli fourth. And then Hamilton, Gasly, Sainz, Tsunoda, Behrman, and Doohan for the rest of the field. Tori says, watch Haas get on the points finish even after trash quali like Bahrain. It's not as easy to do that here as it is in Bahrain. We've seen it so many times in Bahrain where certain teams have a poor qualifying and then end up scoring points, even with both cars. Again, it's harder to do that here, but I am very interested to see what they get up to. Especially with Oliver Behrman starting 15th. And yeah, if that Haas car does have really good race pace, we'll see if he's able to come through the pack. And Haas definitely, I think, will be on an alternate strategy today. I think you'll see Behrman definitely starting on the hard compound tyre and going quite long into the race, probably at least 30 laps in. If you're starting on the hard tyre, you need to really get until at least lap 30 before you make your pit stop. So, yeah, we'll see how those hard tyre runners do. Benjamino gives their prediction, Piastri to win, according to them, from Russell second, Verstappen third, and then Leclerc, Antonelli, Norris, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Gasly, and Sainz. Bit different from the prediction I've gone for, but definitely possible. Definitely possible. So we'll see if you end up correct. Astro says second quickest, a couple of poles. It's clearly not that bad. The thing is, though, is at the tracks where Max has got pole, yeah, it's not been that bad, but it's only the Red Bull has only been close enough to fight for pole with Max in it at tracks where the Red Bull car is a lot better. It's not like the Red Bull at every track is like this. I mean, we saw in Bahrain and Shanghai, they were really quite far off the pace in those two race weekends. And again, it's all dependent on the type of corners we have at a certain track. For example, in Miami in 2 weeks, they will not be as quick as they've been this weekend. For two reasons. One, Miami Grand Prix is likely to be quite hot. Obviously, it's taking place in the day. McLaren are stronger in those conditions, especially in race conditions. But also in Miami, you do have quite a lot of medium and slow speed corners. So Red Bull will not be as good as they've been this weekend in 2 weeks in Miami. And I think you'll see, it'll probably be McLaren and Mercedes as clearly the two best teams in Miami. But then once we get to Imola, it'll probably, Red Bull will probably return to being quick again, because Imola has got mostly high speed corners, but, it's not entirely high-speed corners. But, yeah, Red Bull have still got some work to do with their car if they want to win the championship, because the only reason they're in the Drivers' Championship battle is really because of Max being just so good and so much better than the two McLaren drivers. Let's find some other comments here. Drew Black Music says, got here late, sorry. No problem. We're nowhere near the start of the race yet, so yeah, no problem. Didn't Max get a tow from Yuki on his hot lap, and was it planned? I did not see if Max got a tow on his hot lap, and yeah, if he did, maybe that was the difference in the first sector, but I didn't see that. One Taste says, I feel like there's going to be a safety car on the first few laps. It is common, especially, again, at street circuits, not only a safety car, but a safety car at the end of the first lap. We very well could see that here. Obviously, these cars are very fat compared to, other cars that race here in, the other series, F2, F3, the F1 Academy cars. And that first chicane, you do get contact between drivers quite a bit. So, yeah, I would not be shocked if we got some contact in there. Bolt says seeing Yuki on the podium would be pretty cool. If that Red Bull keeps getting better over the season, Tsunoda is improving. He is getting closer to Verstappen. So it is not impossible that we'll see Tsunoda on the podium during this season. Tsunoda, I think, again, disappointing qualifying because he's had a good weekend. I know, he crashed in practice too, but his pace in practice I thought was pretty good. But he just didn't deliver a good enough qualifying lap, put himself out of position, really. He should have been on the third row of the grid, saying sixth, just behind Leclerc and Antonelli. And if he was, Tsunoda would have a decent chance at a top 5 finish. But, he is where he is on the grid, so it's going to be quite a bit harder to do that in this race. But Tsunoda absolutely can get a podium in this season. I think that is 100% a possibility. It just depends with the Red Bull car if it does get better over the course of the season, which again you would hope it would. Right, let's have a look at some other comments here. As we've got, an hour and 15 minutes still to go until we're underway for the Grand Prix. Rook says last year Stroll crashed lap 6 and most pitted then. Yeah. I remember there was an early safety car, like in the first stint. I just couldn't remember when. And then, yes, most pitted. I think Hamilton and Norris, I remember, stayed out and did their pit stop towards the end and ended up not working. So, Todd says it's true with Stroll. He passed Magnussen. Well, there you go. Arsene says, why is Leclerc not on the pole for the win? Because, realistically, it's not possible. The Red Bull, the McLaren, and the Mercedes are all quicker. And even Lando in 10th, I think, is more likely to win. Because the McLaren is just so much quicker than the Ferrari is. So, yeah. Leclerc is not winning the race today. Maybe could finish on the podium if we get like a couple, DNFs for the right drivers. But Leclerc's not on the podium today. It's just not happening. And I think most Ferrari fans have accepted at this point that Ferrari are not contenders for any of the championships because I mean they can't even get anywhere near a podium really. I mean they were unlucky last week to not be on the podium, but at the end of the day, a fact is a fact, and Ferrari factually have not finished on the podium yet in 2025. Obviously, yes, they did win the sprint race in China, but you only get 8 points for that. And to be honest, you can't win a championship in sprint race, sprint race wins or anything like that. Plus, the driver who won the sprint race was, to a degree, for Ferrari, it was the wrong driver because it was the driver who's least likely to win the championship. If Leclerc had won it, then Leclerc would be what? Leclerc would be 4 points better off. But I mean, that still wouldn't really make a difference, would it? Because Leclerc's already 45 points off the lead of the championship, and he's going to be over 50 points behind the leader of the championship by the end of today's race. And that Ferrari car is not going to start winning races until at the earliest the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola, which is in a month from now. They're not winning in Miami. Absolutely no chance. And like I said, Imola, maybe. It all depends, though, on upgrades. If they bring upgrades and they work, then maybe Ferrari can start winning some races. But yeah, season over, really, in terms of the championship. So I hope Ferrari don't develop this year's car too much because you don't want to compromise next year. Let's find some other comments here if I can. Good evening to Craig, because it's been a while. Good to see you. Vettel Hamilton asks, do you see Alonso scoring points in the in the remaining races of 2025? He will. There'll be the odd race where Aston Martin are not as bad, or we get a few DNFs. I mean, look at what happened in Melbourne. We had what was it, 5 or 6 cars not finish. It'll be a race like that where like a wet race where a few cars don't finish the race, and Alonso ends up getting a point or two. But Lance Stroll is very likely to finish ahead of Alonso in the championship. Do not let anyone online tell you that Stroll's had a better season. If that happens, I don't want to hear anything about that. At the end of this season, because we all know that is absolute bullshit. I mean, yeah, Stroll had a good first couple races, but we know Fernando is clearly better. And the qualifying and race head-to-heads by the end of the season will prove that. Astro says last year ended up being a snooze fest, didn't it? I'm afraid this year will be too. Hope I'm wrong. I don't think it will be. I think it will be definitely better this race than not just last year, but even the year before. The 2023 race was also absolutely just awful. Nothing really happened in that race other than Max coming through the field, which was, I mean, expected because the Red Bull was miles ahead of every other team. But this will be definitely better than the last 2 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix we've had. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident of that. Count Blah, good to see you. Obviously, long time regular of the channel. Nando is done. Fernando, I mean, he's right there with Lewis. People just give him a pass. I would like to see, him next year in the Aston Martin. If the Aston Martin is a lot more competitive, which it really should be, given how much work is going on at Aston Martin towards next year's car. If next year the car is a lot better and is a front-running car, if he's back to performing like he was a couple years ago, then I'm happy for him to continue. But yeah, if he's clearly past it, then yeah, I agree. He needs to probably step away when, when his contract comes up to comes to an end. And I think, with Lewis Hamilton, I've absolutely loved watching Lewis Hamilton's career. He's been an absolutely amazing driver. And as I said in yesterday's stream, despite him being past his best at the minute, Lewis is still, for me, the greatest driver of all time. I don't want to see Lewis clearly past his best for years and years. So yeah, I would rather see Lewis step away before it gets even worse. So, Lewis will be with Ferrari next year. There is no doubt about that. Absolutely no doubt. Unless Hamilton is adamant that he wants to retire at the end of this year, which could happen. Maybe Lewis has such a bad year that he just thinks, fuck it, I'm just going to quit. And if he does that, then fair enough. He is in control of when he steps away, because he'll always be good enough to be in Formula One. It's just, he's obviously not at that peak level that he was at before, and I don't think is gonna. He's not gonna be around for years and years, struggling to match what he's done before. So yeah, Hamilton. I think at the end of next year, most likely, I think you'll see Lewis Hamilton retire from Formula One. Because at the end of next year, he's going to be, 41? His Ferrari contract will be up. He does have the, what do you call it? He does have the option to extend his contract into 2027 if he wants to, I believe. But yeah, I think end of next year, I think Lewis Hamilton will retire. And I think what will probably happen is he'll announce his retirement probably in the days leading up to next year's British Grand Prix. And then he'll have a retirement tour, basically, for the second half of next year. And, be kind of him to do that as well if he did do it. If he was to retire at the end of next year, it would be good if he announced that a few days at least before the British Grand Prix, so that the Silverstone organisers could make their money from, Lewis's last race. But yeah, that's what I think is going to happen there. With Fernando, I think Fernando possibly could retire at the end of 2026. I think it all depends really on the car. If the car is, a real good podium race winning contending car, and he is performing like he was in 2023, I think he'll stay around. But if it's another dud of a car, I think he'll eventually think, you know what, I'm done. I know he said, oh, I could race until I'm 50, but what's the point? What is the point? He's not adding anything further to his legacy doing that. Right. Let's find some more comments here. I'll probably keep reading out your comments, guys, for another probably 20 minutes, and then I'll go on to the teams and just do a quick roundup of how I think they should do, what they can do on strategy to improve their result. And then we'll bring Niblo on, get his thoughts ahead of the race, and then we'll get into it. We've got just over an hour to go until lights out. So keep your comments coming. Keep voting in the poll if you have not voted already. Um, Emmanuel Gosso says it was bad for Schumi at Ferrari year one and we're only 5 races in. You can't compare it to what Lewis has done so far. You can't compare it. Because Michael was in his prime, and we knew, well, not we, but, yeah, because I wasn't even alive then, but people knew that eventually Ferrari would get better to the point where they could at least fight for the championship with Michael in that car. Because, Michael had committed long term to Ferrari and was in it for the long haul. And yeah, Michael was what, 20 when he joined Ferrari. Michael was what, 28, 29, something like that, and was in his prime, was in his absolute prime. Lewis Hamilton is clearly past it, and is not too far away, probably from the end of his career, as I said. And as well, if you look back then when Michael was in his first year at Ferrari, driver-wise, he did not have the competition that Lewis has. I mean, the second best driver on the grid in 1996 was probably what? Mika Hakkinen, who was in a midfield McLaren car. And then after that, you probably had, Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, but both of those drivers were not on Michael's level. When, you've got Max Verstappen, an all-time great on the grid. You've got, Leclerc and Russell, who I think are absolutely potential world champions. Piastri as well. You've got possibly another generational driver in Kimi Antonelli. So yeah, you just can't compare. You cannot compare it. And plus, if you look at the first 5 races that Michael did for Ferrari in 96, Michael did have 2 podiums in those first 5 races, when Lewis has had 0, or is going to have 0. So, yeah. Even if you were to compare it literally just result for result, Hamilton is doing quite a bit worse. Right, let's find some other comments here. Laurie Rastogi asking, do you not think there's a chance Hamilton could improve a little bit in 2026 with the new regulations? Only if the Ferrari car is really, really good. If the car, let's say Ferrari turn up next year with clearly the best car out of anyone, then yeah, Hamilton's, results will improve, because obviously he'll be finishing probably second or third at worst, 99% of the time. But if the car is about as competitive now, next year, then no, I don't think he'll improve. Hamilton is clearly past his best. It happens to F1 eventually. As they say in America, Father Time is undefeated. And it has come for Lewis Hamilton. Um, Astro says Piastri and Antonelli of the new generation now, maybe Behrman too. Absolutely, Behrman is. Bortoletto is part of that. Hadjar as well, Lawson. Yeah, those drivers are absolutely part of the new generation. I mean, Doohan as well, even though he's not going to last long. Colapinto. Yeah, those are the drivers part of this new generation. One thing I did want to comment on quickly was I saw it. I saw on X in the F1 community there was a few people debating a certain F1 YouTuber's video title, and it was Tomo. Obviously, you guys will know Tomo, the F1 YouTuber. He did a video about Oscar Piastri saying, and well, I didn't watch the video, but the title said he was generational. Now, if he, was saying that also in the video, I do disagree with that. I like Oscar. He's a really great driver. I think for an Australian driver, he's generational. And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. There's been many great Australian drivers, but I think Piastri is probably, talent-wise, I think Piastri is probably the greatest Australian driver there's been, probably since, Jack Brabham, all the way back in the 60s. I think, honestly, Piastri is that good. I would say better than Webber, Ricciardo. I would also say better than even Alan Jones, who won the championship. Alan Jones, was very good, but he won the championship during a period where the driver quality on the grid was pretty weak. Yeah, there were lots of good drivers, but there weren't a lot of great drivers. So, yeah, that's why I don't particularly rate Alan Jones, that highly. I'd even say Mark Webber, I think, was probably a better driver than Alan Jones was. So, yeah, Piastri, I think for an Australian driver, I think you could say generational. But generational compared to everybody else, I disagree with that. Max Verstappen is an example of a generational driver. Lewis Hamilton is a generational driver. Kimi Antonelli, I think, is quite possibly the next generational driver. Oscar Piastri is not that guy. Again, I like Oscar a lot. I think he's great, but he is not generational. Again, examples of generational, if you were to go from the start of Formula One to now, the generational drivers would be Fangio, Jim Clark, Niki Lauda, Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, maybe Fernando Alonso, but that's debatable. But yeah, I'd throw that in there. Again, maybe Sebastian Vettel, but I personally would say no. But that's a debate for you guys to have. And then, yeah, Max Verstappen is, I think the current generational driver. But again, Antonelli might be the next generational driver we've got, but we need to see Antonelli actually produce first. And I think that day is coming. Antonelli is a very, very talented driver, especially for an 18-year-old. Ridiculous how good he is. And Antonelli, I know, hasn't had a podium yet this season, but I think he's had a good season, Antonelli. The only race, really, where he wasn't doing well enough, I think, really was probably the last Grand Prix in Bahrain, purely in terms of result. But I think Antonelli was quite unlucky with the timing of the safety car. He was probably on for a 6th or 7th place, which would have been a good result, I think, given, where the pace was at. And today, I think easily Antonelli could finish in the top 5. And I even predicted him to. So I think Antonelli is having a good season. It's just not as good as his teammate, which is really, really, really good. So, yeah. But, yeah, again, with Oscar, I like him, but he is not generational. He just isn't. And also, for anyone wondering, would Leclerc be generational? No. I like Leclerc a lot. I think Leclerc is absolutely one of the best drivers out there, but I would not say Leclerc is a generational driver either. Again, there are very few generational drivers you do get. I mean, I would say if you just look at the 21st century, we've only had a couple, and that's, Hamilton and Verstappen. So, yeah. I mean, that's really the point, isn't it, of a generational driver? It's a once in a generation, truly elite driver that stands out ahead of the rest. And that's why, personally, I wouldn't go with Alonso or Vettel as a generational driver, because I don't think they quite meet the level that Lewis Hamilton has got to in his career. And that's why I think Hamilton is that generational driver for the period of, from the mid 2000s until, say, the late 2010s. But since the late 2010s to now, it's obviously been Max Verstappen. So, yeah. But if there's anyone on the grid who's a young driver at the minute who is the next generational driver, it's Antonelli. No doubt in my mind about that. Let's have a look. See what you guys have to say in response to that. Be interested to see what you guys say. Rudolph in the chat saying, "My man, you just said Hamilton is way past his best. What about Alonso? You forget him. He is older than Hamilton, sir." Well, firstly, no need to call me sir. So what? What you're doing there is just whataboutism, which everyone hates. Yeah, Alonso is not at his peak. We know that, but he is closer to his peak than Lewis is to his own peak. That's what I said earlier, and I'm absolutely sticking to it. So, yeah. And as I said, I am not a fan of whataboutism. It's not an argument. Anyone that uses whataboutism in an argument, I think at that point you've just obviously lost the argument because you're just derailing from the original point. So, yeah. Astro says James was a different era of driver and character. Yeah, but fundamentally, I don't think he was, a every driver that's won a world championship is a great driver. But if we're comparing every Formula One champion ever against each other, Alan Jones is absolutely not an all-time great. Let's be real. And there's plenty of other drivers, I would say, also who are not all-time greats. Nico Rosberg, not an all-time great. Same for Jenson Button. Same for, obviously, Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve. Same, I would say, for Nelson Piquet. Even though Nelson Piquet won 3 championships, I don't think Piquet's championships were actually that impressive, to be honest. He was very good, Piquet, but he wasn't as good as some may think he was, given his list of accomplishments. Again, Alan Jones, I wouldn't say was a all-time great. Keke Rosberg wasn't an all-time great. Jody Scheckter wasn't an all-time great. Yeah, there's plenty of drivers that were not all-time great drivers who won championships. And you don't have to be to win a championship, but yeah. Alan, yeah, had a great career. Wasn't actually that long, his Formula One career, considering he was a world champion, but I think if you were to compare prime Alan Jones to what the prime of Oscar Piastri will be, I don't think there's really a comparison. I think Piastri is much better than what Alan Jones was. Laurie Rostoki says, I feel like Leclerc deserves to be fighting properly for the championship. Absolutely. Leclerc, since the second Grand Prix in Shanghai, Leclerc, I think, has been really performing very well. The car is just not good enough. He's really tried and done his best, but you can only do so much. And yeah, Leclerc has not been given a good enough car, I'm afraid. And I can see Nib in the chat there saying Mark has nobody to blame about 2010 but himself, sadly, as Crystal said. Yeah, Mark Webber, in 2010 was great, but he threw away the championship in obviously in that Korean Grand Prix. If he had finished that race, Webber wins the championship, and Webber probably would have won that race as well in Korea. And Webber, not only, not to rub it in, but if Webber had won that race in Korea, then Webber would have probably won the championship before the final race. Would have won it probably in Brazil, where Red Bull actually won the Constructors' Championship that year. So, yeah, that's all it took was one race, and that's why 2010 was such a great season, because all the other drivers in that championship battle who lost, obviously Alonso, Webber, and Hamilton, they all had that one race where if things had gone in their direction, they would have probably ended up being champion. Yeah, Webber in Korea, obviously Alonso in Abu Dhabi. If Ferrari had not messed up his strategy, Alonso wins the championship. And with Lewis Hamilton, it was it was actually a couple races with Hamilton. He had a back-to-back of DNFs in Monza and Singapore, where both races could have ended up on the podium, and he ended up with 0 points. And that's what took him out the championship fight. People forget that year, Lewis Hamilton led the championship, I think the longest out of any driver. Oh, he was at least one of the longest reigns in the lead. He led the championship, Hamilton, for about 3 months, I think it was, or 3.5 months, which was really impressive because that McLaren was not the quickest car that year. It was good in the race, but yeah, it was not a quick car overall. But the fine margins in the end is what decides it. Laurie asking, will Doohan last the full season? I don't think he will. No. Still would not be surprised if he's replaced for the Miami Grand Prix, even though there were reports coming out of the last Grand Prix that Doohan was going to maybe get more races this year than maybe we were expecting. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's replaced for the next race. He's been really poor this weekend. Crystal Racing in the chat saying, in a parallel universe, Ronnie Peterson, Gilles Villeneuve, Eddie Irvine, and Felipe Massa would all be world champions, and Jacques Villeneuve and Keke Rosberg would not. Absolutely. Irvine was only a couple points away in 99. Obviously, Felipe Massa was 1 point away in 08. And yeah, Ronnie Peterson obviously was close until what happened. But also, if you look at the 1982 championship that Keke Rosberg won, could have ended up going multiple different ways. You could have had John Watson win a fucking Formula One World Championship that year. And that is why I say that the late 70s and early 80s is the weakest era of Formula One in terms of the quality of the drivers, because John Watson almost won a world championship. Credit to John Watson. He was a really good driver in his day. Great commentator. Been a great commentator for what, like 30, 35 years now? But I think that is a clear example that the quality of driver back then was just not that good. Which is another reason why, and I understand why people loved Gilles Villeneuve. He was a very dynamic driver, exciting driver, but I personally don't rate Gilles as highly as others because the era he raced in was just not that impressive. There wasn't really a truly all-time great elite driver that he was having to race against. You could say Niki Lauda and Alain Prost, but I mean, for one, Alain Prost was not the Alain Prost by then. By the time, obviously, Villeneuve had his accident and passed away. But also, Lauda was clearly past his prime when he came back in, was it 81 or 82? So, yeah, that's why personally I don't rate Gilles Villeneuve as highly as others. He was very good, very skillful, but if Villeneuve had raced in the era with Senna and Prost and Mansell, I don't think Villeneuve would have been able to win a championship in that era, even in a competitive car. I really don't. Bravo Balls says, as an Aussie watcher who's been watching since 1997, Oscar has me very excited. Both Mark and Daniel both broke my F1 heart at some point, but Oscar seems to be, quote unquote, the one. Yeah, with Piastri, and I've had this feeling about him really since his F2 season that he is different from Webber and Ricciardo. With Webber and Ricciardo, they were both very good. They had their strong points, but they always just didn't have the full package as a driver, I think, to be one of the absolute elite. Obviously, Ricciardo in his prime was really good. 2014 and 2016, he both those years finished third in the championship, and he was really, really great in a car that could not fight for the championship. But with Piastri, it just feels different because, again, I think the all-around game is there compared to Ricciardo and Webber. Laurie Rastogi saying the current group of drivers is arguably the best. Fair few world champion caliber drivers, along with plenty of really good drivers. Yeah, I think this is probably one of, not sure if it is the absolute best, say, grid we've had, but it is right up there. Because like you said, there's so many world champion caliber drivers. Obviously, Max is a world champion. Lewis Hamilton's a world champion. And then, obviously, Alonso's a world champion. And then you got Leclerc, who I think is definitely championship material. George Russell's championship material. Oscar Piastri is championship material. I don't think Lando Norris is anymore championship material. And then Kimi Antonelli, if he fulfills his potential, I think Antonelli absolutely is a world champion driver. So you've got there, what? 7 world champion caliber drivers on a 20-man grid. That's quite a lot. Right, let me see if I can find a couple more comments, and then I'm going to quickly move on to the teams and just do a quick roundup of how the teams should do in this Grand Prix. Astro asking about Didier Pironi. I don't really know enough about how good he was. He was good, but I don't think he really stood out that much from, or that much more from the pack than, say, a Gilles Villeneuve did. A shame what happened to Pironi later that year at Hockenheim, where I think, was it another driver? Was it Jacques Lafitte? I think it was. Rammed into the back of him in practice and paralyzed him. Pironi probably would have won the championship in '82. That was just such a cursed year for Ferrari. Yeah, Pironi would have won the championship probably that year, but that's what happened. One interesting thing, though, I didn't know is that his son works for Mercedes and is an engineer. Is it Gilles? I think his name is Gilles Pironi or something like that, which is a interesting first name given the relationship between Gilles Villeneuve and Didier Pironi before the what happened. But yeah, I saw that and I thought that was a really great story. Astro's asking, is Science championship material? No, absolutely no way. Science is a good second driver option for me. If you want to have a good second driver to consistently get you second places and the odd race win in a top car, then yeah, Carlos is great for that. But Carlos is not, he's not a world champion level driver. And yeah, that's it. Crystal Racing just put it in the chat. Pironi's sons are named Gilles and Didier. Gilles Pironi stood with Hamilton on the podium a while back. Yeah. That is such a great story. And I'm sure when Mercedes found out that it was his son, they were very keen to have him on board because of just the story. And yeah, congratulations to him on having a great career and doing his father proud. Anyway, let's just quickly round up the teams for this race. McLaren, again in clear air, should have the fastest car. They still, in general, have the best car, but they didn't quite deliver their best laps in qualifying yesterday, as we know. So there is more potential in this McLaren. Strategically, if Oscar Piastri is still behind Verstappen when we get to the first pit stop window, I think it is worth Piastri going for an undercut if he is close enough. Yes, McLaren, I know, don't like to do that. McLaren do prefer to go a bit longer if they can. But if they are stuck behind Verstappen and they need, obviously, to get into the lead, they're going to have to do it. So we'll see when we get to the first pit stop window if they are still behind Max on track. For Lando Norris, without a doubt, I am starting Lando on the hard compound tyre. For two reasons. One, let's say there is a safety car on lap 1 that doesn't have any effect on strategy. Lando then at least can go very long into the race, say until lap 35 or even lap 40, before pitting for very fresh and softer tyres. If there is a safety car mid-race, though, if Lando does then pit, let's say the safety car comes out around lap 20. If Lando then pits for a set of mediums, he could still then make it work until the end of the race. So that's what I think McLaren should do. Start on the hard tyre with Lando, run him as long into the race as he can get, and then pit him for medium tyres. But we will see what they decide to do with Lando. He's got to definitely do something different if he wants to get on the podium this evening. For Red Bull, Max Verstappen, of course, in the on pole position. I think as long as Max is in the lead, it's just about covering off what the others behind do. And if they do that, which they did at Suzuka pretty much, then strategically they've done the best job they can. If Max is behind Oscar, though, if he's only 2 or 3 seconds behind, maybe Max could go for an undercut to put McLaren under pressure. But realistically, I don't think Red Bull are going to go for that, because I think if they are 2 or 3 seconds or more behind Piastri, they'll know that they're not going to be able to have the pace to fight and beat McLaren at that point. So it depends really on where Max is, whether he's leading or not. For Tsunoda, we might see Tsunoda go a couple laps longer than Max, just to try and do something different or strategy to try and improve his result. But in general, Red Bull, I expect to do what pretty much most cars will do in the race on strategy. Ferrari, I think with Lewis Hamilton, they will do the alternate strategy because they've done it for the last 2 races with him. I don't think, though, they'll do it with Leclerc, because I don't think they want to compromise the grid position they've got of 4th place. In Bahrain, yeah, they started him on the harder tyre compared to everybody else. But in Bahrain, you can overtake there a lot easier than you can at the Jeddah circuit. So you don't lose as much from starting on that tyre, because let's say you lose a couple positions like Leclerc did on the first lap, you can easily make that back up at some other point. So yeah, I don't think Leclerc is going to be on an alternate strategy. I think Leclerc will start on the mediums along with most other cars. Hamilton, though, I think will start on the hard tyres, and he will run quite long into the race. We'll see if it pays off for him. Mercedes, I think, should really just do the bog standard one-stop strategy. I don't think there's really anything there's any worth in doing anything wildly different. If Max, though, is still ahead of Piastri when we come to the first pit stop window, if Russell is only a second or a couple seconds behind, maybe worth going for an undercut. We'll see if that situation presents itself. For Antonelli, in 5th, I don't think he's going to do anything really different. I think you'll see both Mercedes probably pitting around lap 17, 18, around what most cars are going to do anyway. Aston Martin are slow as shit. They will not score points today. Pierre Gasly is starting 9th. I think they will probably just do the bog standard one-stop strategy as well. They might pit, though, a bit earlier than other teams. They do tend to do that, do Alpine, so watch out for them. Haas have been very strong with their race pace. I expect both cars to start on the hard tyre and go long into the race before pitting. Keep an eye on them in this Grand Prix. Racing Bulls, I don't really see what they can do differently on strategy to improve their result. Maybe they'll split the strategy with their 2 cars. We'll see if that's the case, but I think they'll probably just do what everyone else does. Carlos Sainz in the Williams, starting in 6th, did wear his tyres out quite aggressively in Bahrain in the first stint, and James Vowles actually came out after qualifying and said he hopes that Sainz does not waste time fighting Lewis Hamilton, because he believes that was a big reason why Sainz wore his tyres down quite a bit in that first stint. So he needs to try and look after those tyres in the first stint to try and get a good result here. For Alex Albon, keep an eye on him. Albon, just like he did in Bahrain, he does run a few laps longer than others into these races. And I think you will see Albon probably pitting. Even if he starts on the medium, I think you will see him probably pitting around lap 23 to 25 instead of lap 20 when probably his teammate will pit, just to go a few laps longer and have a bit of fresher tyres for the end of the race. So watch out for Albon. And for Sauber, normally Sauber always go long on their strategy with their first stint, so we'll keep an eye on them. But they, I don't think, have the pace to really pull it off, unfortunately. Here is, though, my final full race prediction. I do think Oscar Piastri wins the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen will finish in 2nd, in my view. Russell 3rd, Norris 4th, Antonelli 5th, Leclerc 6th, Tsunoda 7th, Hamilton 8th, Sainz in 9th, and Pierre Gasly will finish, I think, in P10, just ahead of Alex Albon in the Williams. But guys, let me just come back to this screen as we've got half an hour to go until the race begins. Let me just get the timer back on screen. And before I bring Nib on and post a link of the stream out, which I'm about to do now, make sure, if you are new to the channel, to subscribe for more content like this, because we do so many, obviously, watch-alongs here on the channel. And as well, make sure to smash that like button if you haven't already. Let's try and get up to 100 likes by the time we get to the start of the race. But let me just post the link of the stream out, and then I will bring Nib on. So just give me a couple minutes. Come on, here to watch along the race in Saudi Arabia, and post that link, and that is all good. One more thing I just want to say is, obviously, I always upload a podcast the day after a Grand Prix reviewing what happened. That will still be happening. I will be uploading my podcast tomorrow reviewing the events of this Grand Prix. Just want to let you guys know that it will be uploaded quite a bit earlier tomorrow than I normally upload it. Normally I upload it like late at night, like 8-9 p.m. at night. Instead, tomorrow it will be uploaded probably around 10 or half 10 in the morning, because I'm going to be very busy tomorrow going out to an event. So, yeah, just to let you know, to not be surprised if there's a bit of an earlier upload there for the podcast, but that will be coming your way tomorrow, as usual, just like I said, a few hours earlier. Anyway, let me bring on my co-commentator for this Grand Prix, who of course has been on for the last 3 races. And let me just open Discord and bring him on. Right, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, there you go. How are you?
I am pretty good, mate. What about yourself?
Not too bad. I'm pretty knackered. I've been awake for, I think, 10 hours now. Woke up quite early this morning. Feeling a bit better when I saw the Chelsea result, as I think you know, from the DM.
From what you sent me, yes.
Yeah. So feeling a bit better. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this race a lot more than I was coming into the weekend with the grid we've got. We've got a really nicely poised grid. And as I said earlier, 4 different teams in the top 4 positions. That's exactly what you want in Formula One.
Yep.
But I know you watched back qualifying, I think, a few hours after. What did you think of the battle for pole between the 2 McLarens and Max? We'll start with Max versus Oscar. It was a great lap from Max, but would you agree that Oscar definitely did not get the most out of his lap?
Well, according to Oscar, he got pretty much the maximum out of his lap. I just think that in these when it's cooler, and when Red Bull did, first of all, Red Bull did a great job to get their car to improve so much.
Yeah.
From Friday compared to yesterday. But in cooler conditions and where tire wear isn't a factor, and that double cool lap by Max, I think, played a pretty big role in them actually being so quick. Yeah, they were just able to extract that performance, and Max does make such a difference. We know this. I mean, very, very close. Credit to Max, but I mean, ultimately, yeah, Oscar should be on pole, but you just go. Max is just Max.
Yeah, similar really to what we saw at Suzuka. It's actually the gap between Max and second place is almost exactly the same as it was at Suzuka. It was that close, and Max ultimately, yeah, he did make the difference. But I think we both know there is more in that McLaren, and obviously there is more in that McLaren than 10th on the grid. What did you make of Lando Norris absolutely bottling what was not a guaranteed pole, but he was looking very quick and he was definitely going to be, in that fight. And then, just commits an awful error at, what was it, turn 4. What did you think of that?
Um, yeah, it was just a weird accident because he went wide on the apex of that left-hander and then just unnecessarily absolutely tried to light it up and spun on the curb and bang he's out. Just another terrible mistake. And I mean, we already knew it, but I think it's starting to show a lot more now on track that Norris is really feeling the pressure. And we're in like what, the fourth round of the championship, fifth round of the championship. How many
Yeah.
races have we had so far?
This is
God,
round 5. Yeah.
this is round five. I'm like, God, I'm losing my mind. But yeah, just a terrible mistake. And well, I mean, I already saw what happened to Lando before rewatching qualifying, and I'm like, oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah, it was just such a poor mistake. I mean, we saw Piastri and Max have a moment at that corner in Q2, but they didn't obviously have quite the moment that Lando had. But they kept it together. They didn't aggressively try to come back on track. But Lando, as you say, really feeling the pressure, and it's only the 5th race of the season. We've still got another, what, 8 months left of the season, pretty much. Like, we are nowhere near the even the halfway point of the season. The halfway point of the season is what, the British Grand Prix, I think, and that's like 2 or 3 months away. So it is quite incredible that Lando is already under the pressure, performing like he is. I can't imagine how he's going to be, in a few races' time, whether, he'll be doing this continuously. Yeah, this race and obviously the last Grand Prix in Bahrain has just been two horrid performances from Lando. Even the race from Lando in Bahrain was just not good enough. It was error strewn and inconsistent. And we'll see, today whether he can do better than that. It is harder to overtake here than it is in Bahrain, obviously being a street circuit compared to the Sakir circuit. So it's not going to be as easy to make his way through, but he should be making his way through to at least 4th, but really needs to aim for the podium if he can get it, because he cannot afford to drop load more points to his championship rivals, especially his teammate. Um, Also, a word on George Russell. A brilliant lap to be only a 10th away from pole position. I mean, through the weekend, they weren't looking actually that great, but were you surprised at all by how close Russell got in the end to pole?
Considering that Max has ultimately put it on pole, probably not. But I mean, yeah, once again, I think just once, because we've obviously got the day, the majority of the practice sessions being during the day, it paints a little bit of an untrue picture of the pace. And I think in these cooler night conditions, the Merc's been set up quite perfectly for that. So yeah, another great lap by George, and he's just continuing to have a great season.
And before we go on to some predictions in a moment, a quick word on Ferrari, who were what, 4th and 7th. Pretty poor effort from them, but not really a surprise. And I don't know if you saw the comments from Leclerc after qualifying about how disappointed he was or is in the car, and also Frederick Vasseur saying they were losing so much time in the first chicane. I know, coming out of testing, I mean, me and you did not have a great feeling about Ferrari coming out of testing and into the first Grand Prix. But are you surprised just how quickly their championship hopes have pretty much come to an end. Because, I mean, they still haven't got a podium, and they're very unlikely to get a podium today. Were you expecting it to drop off this quick?
Certainly not after Black Friday in Australia.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't expecting I wasn't expecting Ferrari to win races just quite, but yeah, it's been quite a large drop off since then, and they're just lacking quite a bit everywhere, aren't they? Especially in the slow speed, as you said. And I mean, they've got these floor issues where they've got to run the car a little bit higher. Although I'm not still sure if that's the case because they brought that upgrade to Bahrain with the floor, didn't they? So I think they know that that's at least improved things, but still they're nowhere near where they need to be, and it's been quite disappointing. And of course, not a great performance so far this weekend by Lewis. And as we know, he's not gotten along with this circuit, has he?
No. Ever since the start of the ground effect cars, he's been pretty bad at this Grand Prix. I saw you earlier in the chat, obviously interacting when I was talking about Piastri. I know I sent you the screenshot of Tomo's video title, and obviously you absolutely loved it. But yeah, with Piastri, would you consider him generational, or do you think, like I said, do you think he's not quite on that level?
Time will tell, I think. Um, Time will tell because I mean, I watched Tomo's video as Jesus Brundle's camera guy is having a tough time getting through there. Um, but I did watch the video, and I mean, I think it's just too early to tell. I mean, I think we can probably get a bit of a better judgment on that after the end of this season. But I mean, there's certainly a possibility of it. I think just the one thing that you would sort of correlate with someone being generational is rapid quali pace. And I don't think Oscar that's like been one of Oscar's main characteristics at all, like throughout his career.
Hmm.
So I but we'll see. Time will tell.
Compared though to obviously the two most recent top Australian drivers, Mark Webber and Daniel Ricciardo, how much better do you think Oscar? I mean, I don't think Oscar is at his peak yet. I think Oscar's, even though he's improved quite a lot from last year, I think Oscar still can improve quite a bit. Until he gets to say his peak. How much better do you think the peak Oscar Piastri could be compared to, say, Ricardo or Webber when they were at their peaks?
Definitely better. I mean, I think that Ricardo and Weber will probably almost have like the quali pace covered. I
Hmm.
mean, especially Mark. I mean, Mark was rapid over one lap. Um, but I mean, I think he's quite quickly heading towards the best Australian Formula One driver I've seen in my time watching the sport, which of course is Weber and Ricardo. So I mean, as long as he keeps going in this direction and wins tonight, I'll be very chuffed.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, very important if he can win, because he'll be the first driver to get 3 wins for the year. And as I said earlier, normally the driver who has the most wins in a season wins the championship. So if Oscar can keep that up over the season, then you very well could say, is the favourite for the championship. I have seen a lot of people after the last Grand Prix say that they think Piastri is the favourite. I think it's probably too early um, to probably say that with anyone clearly. I mean, personally, I still think Verstappen is the most likely, but I would still want to wait another few races before I say who is probably most likely uh, to win the championship. I will be doing a video, by the way, on the channel. Probably it won't be uploaded next week, probably the beginning of the week after. So a few days before the Miami Grand Prix. I am going to do a video on the 4 championship contenders and just my thoughts as to what they perform like so far and how I think, from what I've seen so far, how I think their 2025 will go and how the championship fight will maybe play out for the next few Grand Prix. But yeah, we'll see how things go. And yeah, this Grand Prix definitely a crucial one. And we could, as I said earlier as well, see a change in the championship lead. Piastri or Verstappen or even George Russell, if we have a mental enough race, could take the lead of the championship this evening. What is, though, quickly, Nib, before I just read a few more comments, what's your top 3 for this race?
Well, as I assume, you know where I'm going to go. I think that Piastri will win this race. I think there's enough places to overtake on this track, and I think over a race distance with the tyre wear, McLaren should have what it takes to win this Grand Prix. And then I think Verstappen will still finish in second, and then probably Russell in third. But I can see a world where almost Russell gets quite heavily involved in the battle for the lead. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I mean that's just a rough guess, of course, but um, I really don't know what's going to happen in this Grand Prix. Although, apart from Piastri winning, I really do think he'll win this Grand Prix.
Yeah, it is likely, and I've predicted it as well. Like I said even earlier, there's 3 DRS zones. It's going to be very hard for Max to keep Oscar at bay for the whole race if Oscar is absolutely on it, which he should be. And yeah, George Russell, do not count him out because that car is quick, and if Max and Oscar battle enough, there's no reason why Russell can't get in there and maybe get second in this race or even somehow win. Russell doesn't necessarily need to win today's Grand Prix, but if he could get off the mark with a win, that would be massive for his season. But we have got 12 and a half minutes to go until lights out. Let me know, guys, in the chat. By the way, cheers for the 100 likes. Let me know in the chat, who do you think will win this Grand Prix? There's a poll running in the chat where we've asked who will win the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. There is a clear winner, so I think I'll probably finish up that poll as we've had just over 1,100 votes on the question of who will win the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and 55% of you have gone for Max Verstappen, 29% for Piastri, and then 8% for Norris and 6% for Russell. So interesting that so many of you going for Max. Obviously, Max, last time we got pole in Suzuka, he got the win. We'll see if that happens today. Will be harder today, no doubt. Right, let's find a few final comments here before we go forward. Crystal Racing says, code word for McLaren making Piastri the number 1 because Norris is a common Pokemon type. Hello to Yanni. Good to see you. Let me just scroll up a bit further. Perfectly apt to Aston Martin. They are slow as shit. And I'm pretty much going to say the same for the, as the season goes on. There might actually come a point if Aston Martin do drop to last in the championship, which could happen. It very well could happen. There might come a point where I don't even talk about them. Which the last time that happened was with Williams a few years ago, where I literally would never talk about them in streams or reviews because it was just pointless because they literally did nothing. It's just, yeah, just amazing still. You know, where they've gone. 2 years ago at this Grand Prix, they were third on the podium. Alonso even led a couple laps of this race a couple years ago, and now they're, well, going to get lapped in this race for certain. So,
and the FIA president didn't get involved in anything related to the Aston staying on the podium at all.
I'll let you say that.
Allegedly.
Sarah Gara saying 2019 Williams. I'm thinking, yeah, that year. If you go look back at the streams and reviews, I don't think I think the only time I talked about Williams was when they actually scored a point at Hockenheim with Kubica. But
yeah,
other than that race, I literally just ignored them the whole season because it was just. I think we had insulted them so many times to that point. There was just no point talking about them.
I think because we were so fed up, especially with like Claire and like everything else.
I think the only time really we talked about them that year was the car reveal and the toothpaste livery.
The toothpaste.
Yeah. And then after that, it
honking.
was, yeah. And then in the first race, they were like 5-6 seconds off the pace. Absolutely ridiculous. But I mean, still a good recovery since then. 6 years later, they're now regularly starting in the top 10 with their cars. Not necessarily both cars, but a good recovery because Williams, back then, they were close to just going totally out of business, and thankfully the team was saved from Claire Williams. Right, let me find a couple more comments and then we will get into some final details before this race, such as the grid lineup and some stats. Hello to Super Kev. Good to see you. Let me just scroll up a bit. Crystal Racing says Piastri has a higher ceiling than Ricciardo and Webber. Absolutely. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Russ says, lol, Ferrari's dumped off a cliff in no time. Pretty much the Ferrari experience of, you know, when they have a lot of hype going into a season, they kill that hype pretty quickly. I mean, last year, I think that probably did help them last year to a degree. Because, I mean, there wasn't really any massive expectations with last year. And they started the year with a good car, and for most of the year had a good car, and were not really expected to fight for the championship, even though in the end they did. But yeah, for this year, the expectations and hopes were so high, and they have fallen so short. Laurie says you forgot Haas 2021. Yep, I did. You're right. They also were absolutely abysmal that year. But the thing is with them is they could have been a lot better. They just deliberately didn't try that year because they wanted to fully focus on the 2022 car. And it did work. They ended up the next season finishing like 3 places higher and scoring points on a regular basis. But yeah, at least they didn't try. That was the problem with Williams, is they were trying their hardest, and they were still 5 seconds off the pace. See if we can find one more comment. KH says quickly, sure, Russell will get top 3 in the championship, and also that it is Max's race to lose, in his opinion. We'll see if that's the case. But let's get into some final details before this Grand Prix. Firstly, and importantly, the championship standings. Lando Norris is leading, but only by 3 points from Oscar Piastri. Max Verstappen third, 8 points behind. Russell in fourth, 14 points off the lead. We could have some changes in that top 4 today. Leclerc fifth. Leclerc is 45 points off the lead of the championship, if you're wondering, in fifth. Antonelli in 6th, couple points behind. Hamilton 7th. Albon in 8th. Ocon in 9th. And Lance Stroll in 10th. And then on the constructors' side, McLaren around 60 points clear of Mercedes, who are in 2nd. Red Bull 3rd. Ferrari not far behind Red Bull in 4th. Only 14 points separate Red Bull and Ferrari. Haas are 5th. 1 point clear of Williams, but with where Williams are on the grid, really, Williams should return to 5th place in the championship this evening. Haas, 5th. Point clear of Williams. Aston Martin 7th. Racing Bulls 8th. Alpine now up to 9th after the last Grand Prix. Level on points with Sauber, who are now last. Some key stats, though, we need to go through with the top teams. McLaren have never won in Saudi Arabia. Their best result here was with Oscar Piastri last year, P4. They've never even had a podium here. And yeah, they were, for some reason it says 5th, but it should say 4th and 8th. They were in this Grand Prix last year. Red Bull have dominated the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. They won, obviously, here last year, and they've won 3 of the 4 races in Saudi Arabia since the Grand Prix began. And they had a 1-2 at this Grand Prix last year as well. Not sure it'd be quite this good. Ferrari also have never won the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Best result was 2nd with Leclerc in 2022. They came so close that evening to winning. Last year, 3rd and 7th they were in the race. I think they would probably take that if they were to get that today. Mercedes, though, they have won here before in that mental race with Lewis Hamilton in 2021. And that is their only race win in Saudi Arabia. 6th and 9th they finished here a year ago. Surely it'll be a better result today. But let's go through your starting grid for the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. On the front row, for the first time this year, it is Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri. On the second row, George Russell and Charles Leclerc, both searching for their first win of the year. On the third row, Kimi Antonelli and Carlos Sainz. On the fourth row, Lewis Hamilton and the Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda. And then Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris rounding out the top 10. Just outside of the top 10, Alex Albon and Liam Lawson. Then it's Fernando Alonso 13th, who's been on the podium here before, and Isaac Hadjar in 14th. 15th and 16th, Oliver Behrman, who raced here for Ferrari last year, finishing in 7th. Lance Stroll crashed out of this race after 6 laps. He starts 16th. Penultimate row of the grid, Jack Doohan and Nico Hülkenberg. And on the back row, it is Esteban Ocon, who so nearly got a podium here in 2021. And Gabriel Bortoleto will start last. But that is your grid for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And it will be a 50-lap Grand Prix. As you can see on the screen, everyone is listed as being on the mediums. That is not actually true. I've only just put it that way so it's easier to correct who is on what tyre. Because I think most will start on the medium compound. And, yeah, Rook saying in the chat, everyone is on mediums except for Norris, Hadjar, Stroll and Hülkenberg, who are on the hard tyres. No surprise that Lando is going for the hard tyres. Lewis Hamilton not going for the alternate strategy this time, which is a surprise. But yeah, let me just correct that quickly. Stroll and then, what was it, Hülkenberg was the last driver. So everyone on the mediums except for 4 drivers on the hards. And the lap time difference, according to Pirelli, between the medium and the hard is not really that much. We're talking maybe a 10th here and there. So obviously the hard tyre, quite a bit more durable. As the formation lap will be getting underway in a few moments' time. As we can see Verstappen and Piastri on the front row on their mediums. Pole position hasn't always led the field away into turn one. A couple years ago with Perez, he lost the lead to Alonso, even though Alonso was slightly out of position on the grid. And 2021, we saw the pole sitter lose the leaders. Now the formation lap has begun and the cars come away.
I don't think 2021 should count in terms of anything about this track.
Yeah.
Just because of what an utter shambles that was. Even turn one on the first lap was a shambles.
Well, I think we had I think at least 2 red flags, and I think we had, was it 3 race starts we had? I think one of them, Ocon was on pole in the Alpine. It was a mental Grand Prix, as the front of the pack of just coming through the middle part of the lap. Should be a one-stop race. For people starting on the medium, they'll probably go until about lap 20 before pitting, and people starting on the hard will probably go until about lap 30 at least before they come in for their first pit stop. But a safety car is guaranteed pretty much around this track, so if it comes out at a certain time, it might scupper certain race strategies out there. As Verstappen is just coming up to the end of the middle sector. And we're now looking at the visor cam of Lewis Hamilton. Since the ground effect era began, Hamilton has been dreadful around this circuit. As Verstappen, pretty aggressive on this formation lap. Already through the final corner, as now Russell is only just approaching the final corner and coming through it now. And Verstappen then backs up quite a bit coming out of the final corner. So really now backing up. As he now weaves. Obviously get the heat in the tyres. He'll do some burnouts before getting on pole. And of course, remember, second on the grid, even though it is on the dirty side of the grid, second has the inside line for turn 1. So if Piastri does get a better start, he's got the line into the first corner, which personally I'm not sure that should be the case for a pole position to be, you could argue, offline, but that's just the way it is. As the front half of the field just about lining up. Now we've got Gasly and Norris just doing some burnouts before they line up. And we're now looking at Ocon and Bortoleto at the very back. And yeah, just the final 5-6 cars just lining up now for this 50 lap race around the Jeddah street circuit. As here comes Bortoleto. And here we go. Who will get the crucial win here in Saudi? Verstappen or Piastri? The lights are on. 3, 4, 5 lights. And it's go in Saudi Arabia. And Verstappen and Piastri get decent starts. And Piastri has the inside line. Verstappen goes around the outside but goes off. And then maintains the lead as one of the Mercedes goes off as well. I think Antonelli. But we'll have to see what the stewards will say about what happened there. As Sonoda and Gasly have hit each other. And Gasly's in the wall. And that is a safety car. But it is Verstappen from Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli. And then I think Hamilton is up to 6th. And then it's Sainz Lando Norris is 8th, and then Alex Albon is 9th. Still no safety car has been deployed, which I guess they're letting the cars still do some racing before they get near that point, but the safety car is going to come out. It's just a matter of when on this
As I
first.
said, there's way too much debris on the circuit.
Yeah, and there you go, safety car. So, Alonso up to 10th. Brilliant start by him. Hadjar's gone from 14th to 11th on the hard tyre. And then it's Lawson 12th. And here's a replay of what happened with Tsunoda and Gasly. Gasly was going around the outside, and I don't think there was anything Tsunoda could do about it. Two cars cannot fit through that part of the track.
No. That's your classic, little bit overambitious lap 1 incident.
Yeah, and the only driver at fault there, really, Gasly, for trying such an audacious move, was never on. And inevitable contact, I'm afraid, as Behrman is 13th. And then you've got Stroll 14th, Doohan 15th, Hulkenberg 16th, and then Ocon, Bortoletto, and then Tsunoda now 19th. Tsunoda is still in the race, and Tsunoda will probably pit just to make sure he is on some new tyres and that. But Gasly is out of the race, as Oscar's saying on the radio. He needs to give that back. I was ahead. They looked about equal to me as they came through, as Doohan pitting there and a couple other cars deciding to pit and immediately go on to the hard compound tyre.
Yeah.
But, to me, they look side by side.
If anything, it looked like Oscar was slightly ahead.
We'll see.
It was very, very close.
Yeah, it was too close to tell from just the live angle, as Tsunoda still in the pits after his accident, and it looks like Tsunoda might be getting out of his car because I think there might be too much damage. And yeah, Yuki Tsunoda is out of this Grand Prix. Here, though, Neb, is a replay of the start. I'll let you take us through it.
Yep, and as they're doing it every time we're in Jeddah, showing the fans more than that action on track, and Piastri's ahead, going into the corner, and then Max runs off.
Yeah, it appears that Max was driving inevitably into a gap that was going to disappear and then just drove off. So, as the stewards have noted that incident between Verstappen and Piastri. So, we'll see what happens there. But I would like to see an onboard from... here we go. Here's the onboard from Piastri. Good start at the inside line, and then... it still was pretty quick. The apex, maybe they were still side by side, I don't know. But it definitely, on the approach, it looked like Piastri was... had edged himself just about ahead, as here's a replay of Alonso getting past Albon, I think, initially, but Albon is actually up to P9. I would not be surprised, though, if they leave that go between Verstappen and Piastri, because it was close between the two. But we'll see what they will say. And here's a replay of Gasly's on board. And Gasly was pretty calm into turn 1. Did not go off the track. And then, was side by side with Tsunoda up to turn 4.
Under investigation now.
Right. And then Tsunoda was clearly ahead, and Gasly, just went for an outside move that just was not ever on. So silly there. And here is the onboard from Max. Comes across the cover. A safety car is in this lap. And I think one thing, as Verstappen saying he forced me off, I think one thing that does play in Oscar's favour is if you look at Oscar's onboard, pretty clearly Oscar did not go wide and force Max off. I don't think there is anything Oscar could have done to change that situation. So,
and Max did just say on the team radio there was no intention of him making the corner. Well, he made the corner.
yeah. So that immediately proves that to be bullshit. As the safety car is now coming in. Max has now become the safety car. I will correct, by the way, who is on what compound in a moment. But Tsunoda and Gasly out of this race. Let's see whether Max gets a penalty or whether Piastri can get it done on the track before any of that happens. We'll see. But Max now becomes a safety car. And weaves around a lot, obviously, in the build-up to the final corner. No overtaking until the start-finish line, so he doesn't want to give the cars behind a good run off the final corner into turn one. So he has every right to just keep weaving as long as he doesn't do anything dangerous. As Verstappen catches Piastri out. And we are back underway, and Piastri will be under pressure, just like Russell will be from the car behind as they come down to turn one. And Max Verstappen is given a 5-second penalty. But here comes Russell. Tries for the outside, but Piastri keeps it. And Leclerc stays behind. But Antonelli challenging Leclerc on the exit. But no, all good. But yeah, Max Verstappen, 5-second penalty. And you have to say that is a fair penalty. Max drove off the track. Oscar did not force him off. So that is fair enough. And good that they came to a quick decision. So, it is Verstappen leading on lap 4 from Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Hamilton, Sainz. And then Norris, Albon, Alonso. That's your top 10. And then Hadjar, Lawson, Behrman, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Doohan, Ocon and Bortoletto. Those are the cars in the race. As we continue on. But, yeah, fair penalty, especially since Max was obviously not going to let Oscar back through, wasn't it there? But it clearly drove off the track and gained the advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I hate penalties being given for such small stuff like that, especially when if we probably were left under green, he probably would have given the position. But yeah, right conclusion in the end, I think.
As we've got a move here down the inside, it's Isaac Hadjar on Alonso. But I'm not sure if that's going to work out for Hadjar because Alonso gets a brilliant exit as we're now on lap 5 of 50. And Alonso, DRS now enabled. Alonso, is he going to go for the outside? No, Hadjar has held it. As Verstappen does a 1:33.8. Obviously, Max has got to push really hard now to build a gap before his pit stop. Because that 5-second penalty doesn't just put him at risk from Piastri. Piastri obviously is going to gain from that penalty. But Russell as well, he needs to be mindful of. As Hadjar, is now up to 10th place. Brilliant move in the Racing Bulls. Hadjar continuing to have a good season. And he is on the hard tyre, so we'll keep an eye out for him on that alternate strategy. I did say Racing Bulls may go for a split strategy, but wasn't expecting it necessarily. As Max is told he's got the penalty and says, well, that is fucking lovely. And his engineer says, no comment. But anyway.
Yeah. It's harsh because like he never had the chance to swap, as I said.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you could force that, as long as they know or knew Max would give the position back, I mean, you'd prefer to do it that way. But with Max, you don't know with him sometimes in regards to situations like that. As here is Norris having a look at Carlos Sainz into turn one. But not close enough. But Lando should be overtaking Sainz really in the next lap or two because he's a lot quicker. As Piastri now does a fastest lap 1:33.4. Really, Oscar needs to pass Verstappen still in this first stint so that he doesn't get held up too much. Because even though Russell, is second and a half back, he doesn't want to remain too close to the pack behind when he doesn't really need to. Antonelli is only a few tenths behind Leclerc. That's a good battle brewing. And then, this battle of Sainz, Norris, and Albon as well. Albon keeping up well with his teammate. As we're on board with Lando. DRS Open. Coming up to turn 21. And here we look at Antonelli. And I thought Antonelli would really be pressurising Leclerc in this race, and he absolutely is. DRS Open down to the final corner, and Antonelli surely is going to pass Leclerc at some point. He's clearly a lot quicker, as are Mercedes, around this track. As lap 7, Verstappen out front, leading by about a second, as Antonelli, unfortunately, won't be close enough to overtake into turn 1. Lando Norris, though, is close enough to overtake and passes Carlos Sainz for 7th place. So now he's cleared a midfield runner. He now needs to clear Lewis Hamilton, which will be obviously quite a bit harder. The Ferrari is one of the quickest in a straight line. And they're just showing a quick replay of that move. As Norris, thankfully for him, Hamilton is not too far up the road, only a couple seconds, which he'll catch pretty quickly, at least he should. As Max keeping the gap at about 1.1 seconds. Obviously, Max is having to push hard to try and build a gap to the rest of the field. And Max is currently about 3.5 seconds ahead of Russell. So he's doing a good job compared to Russell, but Piastri is keeping easily about a second behind. And obviously great for Piastri that Max is having to push now hard, because that will help Oscar's tyre wear compared to Max. As Antonelli remains within a second. DRS opened up to turn 1, but still not close enough. As Norris closed in on Hamilton by about half a second or so, I think, on that lap. As Albon, in 9th, really needs to try and get within a second of his teammate, because he is starting to get a bit of a group of cars behind him now. Of Hadjar on the hard tyre, and then Alonso, Lawson, Behrman. I think Albon is just about pulling himself within a second of his teammate, as Sainz now drops well over a second behind Lando Norris. But would you be pretty confident with Oscar just sitting here behind Max, or do you still think Oscar should try for a move?
I think they're just trying to stabilize the tires for a bit, and then I think naturally he'll start to pressurize Max.
Yeah, he's still keeping the gap around a second, and I think that McLaren can definitely go a bit quicker than it's gone so far, as Albon, unfortunately, has not kept within a second of Sainz, so he's going to be under pressure from Hadjar a bit. As they come through the final corner, turn 27. There is a lot of corners around this circuit. So yeah, Verstappen, a second clear of Piastri. Russell is about 3.5 seconds off the lead. Leclerc, 5.5 off the lead. Lando Norris is about 9 to 10 seconds off the lead. So losing about a second a lap. Obviously, in the traffic. As we continue to watch this upper midfield battle, Williams still heading for a good result at the minute. 8th and 9th would be a really good result for them. That would put them back into 5th in the championship, and there'd be a few points clear of Haas as well. As Verstappen told, we have a track limit strike at turn 2. That was for the incident at turn 1 on lap 1. And Max says, I thought they wouldn't count that. It was literally said in the briefing. And yeah, be interesting to see if that maybe gets took away then. If the FIA said that in the driver briefing. As Oscar looks a bit closer, coming down to the final corner on this occasion. He's not got DRS, but he will probably have for the pit straight. As that is Pierre Gasly walking in after his very early race retirement. As we're on lap 10, and Piastri is now with DRS really starting to close in on Max Verstappen, who, as this stint goes on, the McLaren will get closer and faster compared to the Red Bull, as the McLaren does manage its tyres the best of any team. Here's a replay again of the start. Oscar, superior start, had the inside line, and then, yeah, Max just drove off the circuit. And it was a case of drive off the circuit and ask questions later. But the answer to the question was pretty quick. And yeah, Oscar did nothing wrong in that instance. Pretty clear to see. Even though Oscar did run to the very exit curb, like, as much as he could, he definitely did not run wide of the apex. And I think Verstappen was always going off in that.
That's what Piastri was saying.
Yeah, he was always going to do that. And I think, to be honest, it was, to a degree, probably a bit of a smart thing to do, purely to avoid an accident. So, you know, even though, yeah, it's resulted in a penalty, at least it didn't result in a, loss of, key aerodynamic parts from contact or anything, which could have been a lot worse. As we are on lap 11, and Max is still about second clear of Piastri. Russell is just under 3 seconds off the lead. Russell is still doing a good job. He's obviously within 5 seconds of Max, so if Max was to pit now, if both cars were to pit at the same time, Russell would come out ahead. Only by a second, though, as Russell is starting to drop further behind. So by the time we get to the first pit stop, Max is probably going to be over 5 seconds clear of Russell, which is what he's clearly trying to do, is build that gap to Russell, and then at least he'll still be second and not a million miles away from Piastri. As Lando Norris, a second behind Hamilton, but 11.5 seconds off the lead. Still losing about a second a lap. And by the time we get to the pit stop phase, Norris is going to be about a pit stops gap behind Verstappen and his teammate. As Oscar closing in again down to the final corner, but this time will not have DRS, but Oscar just managing the car at this point on now lap 12. And Piastri actually did just about have DRS, luckily for him. Norris has got DRS on Hamilton, but nowhere near close enough into turn 1. But you can imagine he'll get closer and closer now each lap. But one thing to look out for, though, is the gap from Max Verstappen to Carlos Sainz, which is growing, obviously, quite a lot each lap. And I reckon by lap 17, 18, Max might have enough of a gap to pit, take his penalty, and come out ahead of the Williamses. So I think that's what they are looking at, Red Bull. So probably another, 5-6 laps until Max comes in. And then Piastri will have the freedom to probably go another 2 or 3 laps after Max before pitting because of obviously Max's penalty. But Norris, we're seeing, is gaining now on Hamilton. He's only 3 tenths behind, or now 2 tenths behind, somewhere further back. As Piastri getting closer to Verstappen, and here comes Norris down the inside at the final corner. But is that the wrong decision? Will Lando still have DRS down the pit straight? No, he won't. As Hamilton inevitably going to come back at Norris and gets the move done. That was, Lando should have known better than that to overtake into that final corner and been taught a lesson by the much older Brit. He comes back to 6th place.
That's just quite silly, quite frankly, what he did there.
I mean, everyone knows that's a thing here, where if you pass too early, then you can get done again on the straight. That was the whole thing that Max and Hamilton and Max and Leclerc a couple of years ago nearly crashed over. I don't understand why he went for the move. Maybe he thought the McLaren would have so much more grip through the final corner that he would pull away. I don't know. But yeah, he needs to not do that again. As Piastri remaining close to Verstappen. But second behind still. It's down to the final corner. Lando into the final corner. I think Lewis did brake early there to let Lando through. And I think that is once again not going to pay off. And yeah, Hamilton once again gets DRS. And now Norris is stuck in the hell known as Lewis Hamilton's rear wing.
Oh, that's comical.
And it was pretty clear to see, and I know Lando might even argue dangerous, but it was pretty clear to see Lewis did lift early into that final corner, and Lando took the gap anyway. And yeah, nearly went into the back of Hamilton and then took the gap. And then, yeah, Lewis was like, right, I'm coming back. And he did. And once again, easily gets the move done into turn 1. Not sure it's going to help Hamilton much, but there's not really anything he can do. Leclerc and Antonelli ahead are just too far ahead for him.
Let's just having some fun.
Not much more he can do at this point. He's, 3.5 seconds behind Antonelli, so he's not really racing anyone at this point. I mean, he's racing Norris, but this is just, they're just playing games, or Lewis is just playing a game here. As into the final corner, Lewis does not try the same thing this time. Lando, will he get a good exit? It's good enough. And now down the pit straight. Surely Lando will get the move done. To the outside he goes. And yes, this time around, Norris is up to 6th. But that cost him quite a lot of time. He's now just under 15 seconds off the lead. So he's still losing a second per lap to the front runners. And he's got another 3 seconds to find to catch up to Antonelli. As Liam Lawson, by the way, has passed Fernando Alonso. Hadjar in the Racing Bulls has really left Lawson, Alonso, Behrman in the dust. He's quite a few seconds ahead of them now. And here's a replay of Lawson passing Fernando. And Fernando not even defending. The car is just so slow in a straight line, as you can see pretty clearly on that replay. But yeah, this strategy for Norris is not working because he's losing a lot of time out there. I mean, even compared to Russell, he's nearly 10 seconds behind Russell after 15 laps. So, going to have to be some drive in the second half of this race if he's going to finish on the podium. As on lap 16, it is Verstappen leading by 1.5 seconds. Remember, though, Max has a 5-second penalty, so really Piastri is the real leader. Russell is third. Russell is over 5 seconds behind Max now, so Max is in a net second. Russell third. Leclerc fourth. Leclerc, got to say, doing well. He's within 3 seconds of Russell. Really doing well. Antonelli fifth. Norris sixth. Hamilton 7th. Lewis Hamilton, by the way, is nearly 10 seconds behind his teammate after 16 laps. Quite poor. He's actually dropping a bit into the clutches of Carlos Sainz, who's only 2 and a bit seconds behind him. So Hamilton has got midfield level pace at the minute. And then you've got Sainz, Albon, and Hadjar rounding out the top 10 as Norris catching Antonelli by 0.5 seconds a lap. As the gap out front between Verstappen and Piastri now 1.7, 1.8 seconds. I'm pretty sure, though, that's Max pushing just as hard as he can as to why that gap has grown. But we're now looking at the visor cam of Lando Norris. And yeah, Lando 15.2 seconds off the lead. He's been very quick now in clear air since he passed Hamilton. He's now pretty much, I think, the quickest or one of the quickest cars on the track. He's definitely going quicker than Piastri. The only car he's not maybe going quicker than is Max out front. So in clean air, he is quick. It's just he spent too much time in dirty air or playing silly games with Lewis Hamilton. That's the replay of one of the McLarens sparking on the exit of turn 10. Max now
Piastri.
2.3 seconds clear of, as you said, Piastri it was. As the pit window for the medium tyre has opened. And I expect Verstappen, I don't think will be in quite yet, but I think, yeah, these next 2 to 3 laps, I think we'll see Verstappen coming in. As Verstappen is about to begin lap 18. Now 2.3 clear Piastri. If he keeps this up, he might build a 5-second lead to Piastri, but I still get the feeling Piastri is managing in second as Norris is just over about 1.3 seconds, 1.4 seconds, sorry, behind Antonelli. So that fight will get going in a moment. And we're actually seeing Antonelli and Norris. Yeah, by the end of this lap, Norris might be getting the DRS from the back of Antonelli. As we're looking at Alonso fighting tooth and nail with Liam Lawson for 11th place. Liam Lawson, one of his favourite drivers on the grid. I'm sure he cannot wait to go wheel to wheel with Liam many more times for the rest of his career. As, yeah, Norris, I think now it's just crept within a second of Antonelli. Russell saying on the radio, my tyres are toast. if Russell was to pit now, he would come out in between Hadjar and Lawson. So he would have quite a bit of clear air, a couple seconds worth, but it does feel like the top 4 especially are trying to clear a gap to the midfield before pitting. So I still think Russell especially will be having to wait a few more laps yet before pitting, as Norris gets a good exit out the final corner compared to Antonelli. And down the straight we come, and Antonelli is not even going to defend. Which, to be honest, is probably a smart thing to do, because it didn't gain Lewis Hamilton anything. So, Lando Norris up to 5th. And now the next target is Charles Leclerc, who won't be as easy to pass, because Leclerc is actually still lapping at a good pace. A better pace than, well, at least compared to Mercedes, a better pace than I was expecting. Compared to the Red Bull, he's way off of it. As Oliver Behrman pits for a set of hard compound tyres. So Behrman comes out in 18th on lap 19. And let me just update that. Yeah, Lando is... no, not Leclerc. Lando in 5th on the hard tyre. The highest placed hard tyre run. I think the hard tyre is definitely starting to work. You can see with Hadjar, he's closing back in on Albon. Again, it's Piastri. Pits first, interestingly. So, in comes Oscar for a set of hard tyres. Not a great pit stop. That was about a second slower than it needed to be on lap 20. But Piastri is going to come out as Antonelli pits. Piastri should come out in 6th place ahead of Carlos Sainz. And then Antonelli is going to come out, I think, 11th. Yep. Ahead of Lance Stroll, as Alonso is pitted as well. So Antonelli is now 11th. Stroll is 12th. Hulkenberg 13th. Alonso is now 17th. Alonso did that pit stop to cover off Oliver Behrman. As Max Verstappen now out there in the lead. Nearly 10 seconds clear of Russell. As they're telling Max, keep pushing. He's doing a great job, Verstappen. Really is. He's keeping himself absolutely in the fight for the race win here. Even with the penalty he's got to take, because the pace is very, very good. As he begins yet another lap. And we will see how he does compared to Piastri in these next few laps. As George Russell pits for Mercedes. And Russell might come out ahead of Sainz. It's going to be close. Might come out in between the two Williamses, actually. And, yeah, he will come out just about ahead of Albon, who's having to defend from Hadjar into turn 1. And Albon does defend. So Russell, 7th. As Hadjar on the hard tyre is really going quickly now. So Norris is up to 3rd now. Still on his hard tyres. Lando Norris is lapping about the same pace as Max Verstappen out front. So Lando, I think pace-wise, is doing the best he can, as they tell Max, give it everything. And I think this...
Yeah, and Piastri stuck behind Hamilton in this lap.
Yeah, as we're seeing that now, as, this is going to cost Piastri probably a few tenths as Piastri does a wall of death around the outside and gets the move done. But I'm not sure that's going to help necessarily, because Hamilton now will come back with DRS as Max pits on lap 22 and takes that 5-second penalty. And yeah, Lewis Hamilton did briefly get back past him, and then Piastri has repassed Hamilton as Leclerc, the new race leader. Piastri will go into the lead, and Verstappen not as far behind as we thought he would be. So that's worked out nicely for Red Bull given the circumstances. So Leclerc leading now. Leclerc has not pitted yet. And then it's Norris, Piastri, Hamilton, Verstappen. And then George Russell 6th. Albon 7th as Carlos Sainz has pitted. So Hadjar 8th. Antonelli now 9th. Lance Stroll in 10th place. Here's a replay of Piastri passing Hamilton. And yeah, wall of death around the outside. But yeah, that wasn't the smartest thing to do, because Hamilton, I think, did have another go back at him. But in the end, worked out. So yeah, Antonelli 9th, Lance Stroll 10th, and then Hulkenberg, Ocon, Doohan, Bortoletto, Sainz, Lawson, Alonso, Behrman. We've now got every driver on the hard compound tyres except for Leclerc, Hamilton, and Albon, who are on the mediums, as Leclerc is staying out.
Yeah, their pace is actually very good. They're doing personal best times on their tyres. The front two at the moment.
Yeah, it's not working out too bad, this, for Ferrari. But at least with Leclerc, is now Verstappen is going to be stuck behind Lewis Hamilton, as Albon now pits on lap 23. So Hadjar, who hasn't pitted yet and started on the hard tyres, is up to 7th. And then it's Antonelli, Stroll, and Hulkenberg now into the top 10 for Sauber, as Verstappen has got so much more grip than Hamilton, but he can't go anywhere with it to pass Hamilton, and this is costing him a lot of time. But he will get the move done eventually on Lewis, as Albon has come out in 15th and not that far behind teammate Sainz. So it's worked out for Albon just about. As here comes Verstappen now down towards that final corner, as Lewis Hamilton is told to box. Verstappen swoops around the outside and gets the move done. So, and Lewis Hamilton will indeed pit, and Hamilton will come out somewhere in the midfield. He won't actually be that far ahead of Carlos Sainz, as the Williamses were not a million miles behind Hamilton. Should still come out ahead, but just an indication of how far behind he is going to be compared to the others. As we're looking at Sainz trying to pass Doohan down the pit straight, and Hamilton comes out in 8th place at a Stroll, as Sainz passes Doohan. So now every driver is on the hard compound tyre except for Leclerc in the lead, who is still doing some great lap times. Let me just update that every driver is on the hard compound tyre except for Leclerc. So Leclerc is currently, by the way, about 9.5 seconds ahead of Piastri, which is about half a pit stop. So yeah, that's not too bad at this moment. But That's a replay of Sainz passing, doing into turn 1. But, yeah, Williams, that pit stop phase went pretty okay for them. The driver, though, to watch out for in the midfield is Isaac Hadjar, starting the hard tyre. Was right up behind Albon before Albon pitted. Once Hadjar comes in, it's going to be very interesting to see just how quick he is at the end of this race. As we're on lap 25, Leclerc is lapping at about the same speed as Norris. Very good lap times from Leclerc. Norris second, Piastri third. Piastri obviously is the net leader, and Piastri is about 4.5 seconds ahead of Verstappen. And then Russell about 3.5 seconds behind Verstappen, as here comes Lawson. Pow! Passing Bortoletto as Alonso tries to literally shoot his way past around the outside and nearly has a, as Martin Brundle would say, an airplane crash.
Yeah. Wow. Bortoletto just absolutely had no idea that Alonso was going to do that.
Yeah, he came out of nowhere there. And Bortoletto, thankfully, and Alonso both got away with that. But Alonso will pass Bortoletto eventually. Obviously, Bortoletto started on those hard tyres. As we are halfway through, by the way, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Only another 25 laps to go. This race not quite over yet as... wow. As Fernando saying, wow, he moved on to braking. Wow, that was close. And then he does the Kimi Raikkonen Bois. That was... yeah, that could have been a massive accident. Very, very lucky.
Goodness me.
As Leclerc on lap 26 still out there and still lapping at the same speed as Lando Norris.
Yep, still doing personal bests as well in the first sector is Leclerc. Just for reference, on the lap before Hamilton pitted, he did a 35.5, I think it was. And Leclerc on that lap has just done a 33.5.
Yeah.
So
I think Hamilton was saying on the radio he's got no rear end grip, and yeah, that is seemingly the case because he is unbelievably slow out there.
I mean, Leclerc's flying. He's faster than Norris on this lap.
Yeah, he is doing an unbelievable job on those tyres. And Oscar Piastri, who I'm sure is managing his tyres, obviously he's going to try to go to the end, but Piastri is not lapping as quickly compared to Leclerc as you would have expected. So
half a second every lap.
Yeah. I mean, on those tyres, fresh tyres, you would have expected at least a second. So, as Leclerc does another lap. So, this is really working out well for Leclerc, who, once he pits, he'll be on fresh, hard tyres. And you never know, might get in the fight for the podium here with the pace he's doing. He is about 16 seconds ahead of Russell. If he was to pit now, he would come out only about 4 or 5 seconds, I think, behind Russell, which wouldn't be too far behind on much fresher hard tyres. As this is Behrman trying to pass Bortoletto, which he's about to do. And he does. So, Behrman up to 17th. As, yeah, top 10 is still Leclerc, Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Russell, Hadjar, Antonelli, Hamilton, Stroll, Hulkenberg. Also, Isaac Hadjar doing a great job out there. Antonelli is not really catching as quickly as I expected. So Hadjar doing a great job out there on those hard tyres. He's another driver we've got to watch out for in the second half of this race. As Leclerc starts yet another lap. Lap 28, still out there. Obviously, if a safety car was to come out, then he would be in dreamland. But even without a safety car coming out, he's putting himself in a possibly a good position for a podium finish in this Grand Prix. As Lawson was about to see the Kiwi pass an Aussie into the final corner. Obviously, Doohan pitted on the first lap, I think he did. And yeah, Lawson is Doohan there, tried to slow down and let Lawson pass too early into the final corner, but Lawson saw it coming. And Lawson gets it done as Carlos Sainz moves back into the top 10. So, go on.
I've got no idea when they're going to pit Leclerc because they're lapping around about the exact same lap time as Russell.
It depends how many laps they want to give him to pass Russell. I think they'd want at least 15 laps to slowly pull in Russell and pass him. So yeah, it should be in the next 5 to 7 laps, you'd imagine.
Just another personal best, Leclerc, a 33.3, matched by Norris.
Yeah, Norris, obviously we haven't talked about. Lando will go on to the faster medium tyre in the final stint. Lando, though, if he was to pit now, would come out about, 6 or 7 seconds behind Russell. So he would still need to do quite a bit to get on the podium. Plus, obviously, he would have to pass Leclerc, who I assume he'll have to pass him. So it's going to be close with Lando. He might get a podium here, Lando, but again, it will be close between, I think, Russell, Leclerc, Norris at the end of this race as Albon passes Hulkenberg. So Williams now 10th and 11th. As Hadjar now has Antonelli within a second of him. But again, took a while for this to happen. Hadjar doing a great job. And if Hadjar was to pit now, he would come out not that far behind the Williamses. So Isaac Hadjar might end up winning the midfield fight with the lap times and tyre stint length he's doing. As that was Alonso, as here comes Charles Leclerc pitting for the hard tyres on lap 30. So 20 laps he's got to get onto the podium. If he gets the podium, that's the best, really, Ferrari can get from this Grand Prix.
Another awesome pit stop by Ferrari.
Yeah.
It's been the highlight of their season.
Yeah, they've got the fastest pit stop of the season so far, as Norris is now the leader. And Leclerc, as Antonelli passes Hadjar, Leclerc comes out in 5th, and Leclerc is 3.5 seconds behind Russell with 20 laps to go and on nearly 10 lap fresher tyres. I would not want to be George Russell right now, knowing that, which he will just about be finding out. So, yeah, Leclerc is going to be very strong now. But what will Lando Norris do? As he is now the race leader. His teammate Piastri is about 3.5 seconds behind. As Norris through the final corner. Will he come in? No, he will not. I think Norris probably will end up going another few laps. Probably, yeah, till lap 35-ish here. But it's about whether his pace is strong enough now. Really needs to push hard. As we enter lap 31. Everyone is on the hard compound tyre. But that's not the way it's going to finish. Hadjar will eventually go on the medium. Stroll will go onto the medium. I think Hulkenberg as well will go on the medium. And Lando Norris too. As here is Sainz about to pass Lance Stroll down into turn 1. And he does so. So Carlos up to P9. Albon only a couple seconds back, as this is Behrman about to pass Doohan for 16th. And good move around the outside. Doohan is going to try it to hold it around the outside, but no, the grip is not there. And Behrman is 16th. Haas not having a good race, unfortunately for them. Yeah, Lando Norris, if Lando was to pit now, he would come out probably about 5 seconds behind. No, not 5 seconds. Probably about 6 or 7 seconds behind Russell. As Leclerc, by the way, has just crept under 3 seconds behind Russell. So he is starting now by a few tenths of a second to catch George Russell. And at the minute, I'd be having my money on Leclerc for the podium. As here is Antonelli, who grazes quite a bit the inside barrier there of turn. Well, I don't even know what turn it is. There's too many bloody turns at this track. You can't tell which one's which, except for the first 2 corners and turn 4. I have no idea what turn number is which after that.
Yeah, and what, the final corner's turn 27?
Yeah. Half the corners here are not even, they're just flat out. It's ridiculous. I think it's purely because they wanted like a record of the most corners on an F1 track or something, as Albon passing
definitely.
Stroll. But
I'm not too sure why they didn't pit Hadjar a little bit earlier here. If they pitted him a couple laps ago, he actually would have come out ahead of the Williams. I don't know if they're waiting for a safety car potentially or something, but now he'd fall behind both the Williams. So a little bit strange there.
yeah, the only other thing I could think of is that they're concerned, as I missed a lap, sorry about that. It's now lap 33. They just maybe want to just shorten that stint on the medium in case they don't want the tyre to fall away towards the end. But yeah, they were looking really good a few laps ago in terms of the gap they had. It's not so much now. Hadjar would come out about 5 seconds or so behind Sainz if he pitted now. As this is Lawson trying to pass Ocon. Both racing bulls having a better race they had in Bahrain. Don't really know why in Bahrain they were so slow, but here they're at least in the race looking better. As Lawson easily passes Ocon for 13th place. As Jack Doohan has now pitted, and he fell to last anyway. As they're just telling Piastri what Lando is doing, and then Oscar saying, yeah, getting a bit of dirty air and it's not ideal. As Piastri is about 2.5 seconds, or just under 2.5 seconds now behind his teammate. Obviously, Oscar is the net leader. Max Verstappen, by the way, 4.8 seconds behind. Max is just not able to catch. The McLaren is too quick, I'm afraid, even though Max is on a couple lap fresher tyres. Yeah, they don't want to make things more complicated than it needs to be out front, because Piastri is going to win this race, and they don't need to complicate things. As Leclerc has cut the gap down to Russell to 1.8 seconds. And I reckon within the next 2-3 laps, we're going to start seeing some battling here for what is the net last place on the podium once Lando Norris pits. Here is now Lawson exits in the final corner, about to pass Hulkenberg for 12th, which he does. As Hulkenberg pits. The Hulkenberg, I don't think has used the medium yet, as that is Alonso passing Ocon. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's the main fight we're looking out for, is Leclerc and Russell. As McLaren are getting ready with the tyres. Box, they tell Norris. And here he comes. He will come out in 5th place, but he will have, as he brakes hard for the line and comes in. That was a great pit stop. 2.6 seconds. And yeah, Lando will come out in 5th on the medium compound tyres. I was about to say, Lewis Hamilton still really struggling. Not really catching Hadjar that quickly. Is Hamilton. He's having an awful race that just seemingly gets worse the harder he tries. As Lando locking up on the entry to the pit limiter line. And it looked like he just got it pressed before the line. So I think he should be okay.
Yeah, he's good.
And now we will see what he can do as Isaac Hadjar now pits. As yeah, Hulkenberg has gone on to the medium. So we're getting some medium tired runners who are just going to give it now everything in these final few laps to see what they can get out of this Grand Prix. Hadjar comes out in 10th place, only 3.5 seconds behind Albon, and then another 2 seconds up the road to Sainz. So it's still on for Hadjar, and it would be a very important result if he could get it. Because Racing Bulls are only 3 points behind Aston Martin in the championship. So here is Leclerc. Just over a second he is behind Russell. 1.2 seconds it is. But surely on the next lap, Leclerc is going to get a lot closer to the back of that Mercedes. Going longer has paid off for Ferrari, just like it did in Bahrain. It's something that is really working for them. And I've got to say, their race pace in this last couple races has definitely been better than it was in the first 3 Grand Prix of the year. As black and white flag for Bortoletto for moving under braking. Bit late, that happened quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
But Leclerc, let's see how or when he gets under a second behind. And obviously it'll be even tougher for Russell because this Ferrari is one of the quickest in the speed traps this weekend. As he keeps still over a second ahead for the moment. As Oscar Piastri, obviously now in the official lead. He's 4.5 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. So should head to victory. But the fight for the podium, the last podium place, is going to be close. Here is Leclerc getting closer down to the final corner. Russell, we saw, did very well to keep cars behind in Bahrain. Needs to do that here as we begin lap 37. As Isaac Hadjar, by the way, has already gained a second on Albon. So Hadjar is going to be racing those Williamses pretty soon. But 9th and then probably 8th place as well. As Leclerc pushing hard behind the wheel. And now under a second behind, and this is where it gets tough for Russell with so many DRS zones. As Lawson now is trying to pass Stroll, who is still not pitted. And Lawson overtakes up to 11th. As now Leclerc. DRS open. Now he will really start to gain down these straights. And down to the final corner, Leclerc gaining a lot on Russell. And really has a lot of grip going through that final corner on the entry. Gets a good exit. It's going to be close into turn 1. Here they go. Can Russell fend off the Monegasque? Leclerc, lots of speed with the DRS open, and he gets the move done. What a rocket that Ferrari was down the straight. And he gets it done. Leclerc, what a drive he is having here. One of the drives of the day, and he is up to third. 7.5 seconds behind Verstappen. It would be some drive if he was to catch and pass Verstappen for second. But I'm not sure that's possible. But that Ferrari nib in a straight line with DRS. Absolute rocket, wasn't it?
Not quite the 2021 Mercedes in a straight line, but very, very fast in a straight line, that's for sure. And he'll be able to gain maybe 0.6 a lap on Verstappen, but I'm not too sure if he'll be able to get it done. One thing's for sure is Norris might end up actually flying right up to the back of Leclerc. He's certainly got some very good speed on these fresh medium tyres.
Yeah, he's 4.5 seconds behind Leclerc with about, 12 laps to go. So he needs about half a second a lap, does Norris, if he's going to get on the podium. 10-second penalty for Liam Lawson for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Another penalty for Lawson after last week. I don't know what that was for. I don't think we saw.
Wasn't even aware he was under investigation. Yeah. They've not shown us yet.
Hopefully we'll see a replay of whatever that was, as this is Alonso about to pass Stroll for 12th place. But with Leclerc, yeah, could get close to Verstappen at the end if he does gain, say, a half a second a lap. But you'd think Max would be able to just about hang on, as Piastri saying there's a red flashing light on a balcony into turn 10. It's really annoying, looks identical to a red flag. And they say copy will report. Obviously, you don't want to be distracted when you're leading a Grand Prix with just over 10 laps to go. As Alonso, down the inside of Stroll, gets the move done. Up to P12. Alonso has driven well in this race. 12th is not really where the car deserves to be. So, yeah, he's doing well. He's doing the best he can. But Aston Martin have given up. As here is Lando Norris, now just 1.5 seconds behind Russell. He's going to be within a second of Russell, probably the next lap around. As Leclerc just under 7 seconds behind Verstappen. They're going to have to tell Ferrari, they're going to have to tell Leclerc to keep pushing after Verstappen, because even though Leclerc just made that move and has raced off into the distance, he still might miss out on a podium here with the pace this McLaren's got. Lando has done the fastest lap.
I mean, Leclerc should be okay. But, yeah, I mean, Norris is pretty fast, but I don't think he's going to quite have the pace to get past Leclerc. I mean, the pace delta isn't honestly that big between the top 5. It's just because they've had such fresh tyres, Norris and Leclerc on Russell, that they've been able to get past. But everyone's lapping in about the high 132s, actually. So,
I don't know if you just saw that, but Lando has been noted for crossing the pit lane exit line.
oh,
Which, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that an automatic penalty?
It certainly used to be in the glory days. That's an instant 5-second penalty. So
We'll see. As he's about to pass, Russell here gets a brilliant exit out the final corner. And Russell doesn't have anything to defend with. Mercedes' race has really quite fallen apart here. And Lando Norris is up to 4th. Russell is fine from Antonelli behind. But yeah, Mercedes have just not had the pace we were expecting, unfortunately, in this race. But now we will see what Lando can do about Leclerc. Yeah, back in the day, that was an instant drive-through penalty, obviously, when we had those, if you crossed the pit lane exit line. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure it said pit exit line. I don't think it was pit entry. So, should be a penalty if that still works as normal. But we'll find out, as here is a key battle. The two Williamses and Isaac Hadjar fighting over 8th, 9th and 10th in these final few laps. As Lance Stroll, by the way, is now, I think, 17th on a set of mediums, I believe.
as Norris is about to absolutely obliterate the fastest lap.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not showing the tower order at the minute, so I can't read out the gaps. Here they come. Yeah, he's just under 4 seconds behind Leclerc. Leclerc is still catching Verstappen, but not by enough to catch him by the end. But yeah, this is going to be very close between Norris and Leclerc here.
Better safe. Norris keeps doing a 31.7. He certainly will catch Leclerc. That's a monstrous lap.
Yeah, he is really on it now. Russell is already dropped to 4 seconds behind that Lando after a couple laps. Just shows you how far off the pace Mercedes are on older tyres at this point. As Hadjar coming down the pit straight dives to the inside to try and distract Albon, but it's not going to work. I think Williams are working deliberately as a team here. Carlos allowing Albon to have his DRS to protect 8th and 9th. As here's a replay of Lando crossing the pit exit line. I think we're about to see. So gets going and then didn't look like he did to me. Let's see an outboard. Oh no, he did. I think. Did he offboard? Did he cross the line?
Just waiting now. Hard to tell. Very hard to tell.
Yeah, it looked close.
Just wanted to say, what I feared for Hadjar is exactly happening. If they'd just pitted him a couple laps earlier, he would have been able to manage these tyres, just staying ahead of the Williams. So I don't know what the strategist at Racing Bulls was doing, quite frankly.
Yeah, they're not great at racing bulls. They regularly get it wrong.
Oh, that 2-stop in China was disgusting.
As was it Bortoletto's been told on the radio to let Hulkenberg through, which he does. Obviously, Bortoletto is on much older tyres. And yeah, Hadjar, even with his extra pace, can't really go anywhere with now Williams working as a team the way they are. So, yeah, a shame. But maybe he'll have a much extra pace later to somehow break this little DRS train.
I just want to say that Russell really is slow. Like even Antonelli's nearly a lap faster than him at the moment.
I don't get why Mercedes are so slow. I know they pitted earlier compared to Ferrari and Norris, but I mean, Russell was, 10 seconds behind Verstappen when Max pitted. There's no further investigation for Norris, by the way, so I think he probably did not cross the pit line there, or there wasn't enough evidence to suggest he did. Yeah, it was 10 seconds, the gap, or 9 seconds, I think, between Verstappen and Russell. 20-odd laps later, it's now, 15 seconds. So, yeah, he's just not had any real pace in this Grand Prix, unfortunately. And Ferrari and Norris have taken advantage of that, as Lando still catching Leclerc. Leclerc still catching Verstappen. Obviously, both drivers having to push. As the gap out front about 4 seconds, as we're looking at Lewis Hamilton, who is literally miles behind his teammate. He's 26 seconds, I think it is, around that. 26, 27 seconds behind his teammate. Shocking performance from Hamilton. I know
28.
Yeah, he's losing that much time. It's going to end up being probably 35 seconds behind his teammate by the end. But I know maybe, he isn't happy with the balance, but nowhere near good enough in that car, I'm afraid. I mean, with Leclerc doing what he's doing, Hamilton should be really beating Russell for 5th. But he's struggling to catch Antonelli for 6th. As we've only got, 5.5 laps to go. As Hadjar still stuck behind the Williamses, who are doing brilliantly here, working as a team. And the Williams absolutely need these points. 6 points in the championship is massive for them. And there's nothing Hadjar can do. At least Hadjar will get something if he finishes in 10th. But there was easily potential for more. And I don't think Hadjar is going to be able to break this pattern, I'm afraid. But he's had a good race, at least. Lando Norris, under 2 seconds now behind Leclerc. Gap 1.8. It's going to be so close at the end of this race for 3rd. And for Lando Norris, the championship very well could depend on whether he gets on the podium here. As Piastri complaining about some traffic ahead, which is costing him some lap time, as Max Verstappen has took a few tenths out of him. As, we're just watching the Williams and Racing Bulls battle, which is not really a battle.
Oh. Yeah, geez, Oscar's lost about 8 tenths on this lap, actually, in traffic.
He's had to follow whoever that car was through the whole first sector, I think. So, not good at all. As Hadjar, he gets close.
Lost a lot of time
in the braking zone of turn 1, but not close enough. Liam Lawson, actually, his teammate's not too far behind, and I think is catching. So we might have both Racing Bulls on the back of the 2 Williamses by the end. As Lando Norris has not really gained on this lap on Leclerc. Not as much as he needs to, if he has gained anything. As we begin lap 47, the gap 1.8 seconds between Leclerc and Norris. Leclerc should hang on for 3rd, but it's not a guarantee as of yet, as Stroll is up to 16th. George Russell is now 11.5 seconds behind Norris. I think Russell is probably just has backed off the pace quite clearly. I think is just coasting home at this point.
They've got to have turned everything down.
Yeah, they know they're not going to lose any more positions as we're now going to see a replay of Stroll using Piastri to pass Bortoleto. Bortoleto let Piastri through, and then Lance went round the outside. Good move. But only, of course, for 16th place. Lance stayed out too long. I think they were praying for a safety car with him. As Lando, once again, not really gaining on this lap, and I think he's lost the best of his tyres. And I think has lost the chance to finish on the podium. And as it stands, there will be a new leader of the Drivers' Championship, and it will be Oscar Piastri, who will go into the lead by 10 points over Lando Norris, with Max just behind Norris. And then Russell will be fourth. I think it'll be Piastri. Yeah, Piastri will be in the lead. Norris 10 points behind. And then Max will be 12 points off the lead. And then Russell will be, I think, 29. Will it be 29? No, 26 points off the lead. So, still pretty close it'll be for the front four, as Russell saying front left is not looking good at all. Do you have any concerns about it getting to the end? I've got a band on the inside shoulder. It's opening up, so clearly that's the issue. He's got a massive tyre issue. As Leclerc here has got a bit of traffic. It's a Sauber. It's Bortoleto. But thankfully, Leclerc does get some DRS to help him. But that wasn't great for Leclerc. As Lando has gained now, because of that traffic, about half a second on this lap, as Piastri begins the penultimate lap of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Piastri is going to hang on for victory. Verstappen will finish in second, but who will finish third? It should be Leclerc, but it ain't a guarantee. As, by the way, the Sainz Albon and Hadjar battle is still as is. They're all still in position. Hadjar is trying the best he can to close in on Albon, but nothing is working. As Lando starting to drop back a bit now with Leclerc. Leclerc doesn't really have any traffic anymore. There is a car, I think it's Stroll, it's Stroll? Or it might be, no, I think it's Ocon. Or, yeah, there's a car just a bit further up the road that Leclerc might have to contend with on the final lap. As they come now out of turn 21 and out down to the final corner. As Oscar Piastri begins in a moment. Now, there you go. The final lap of this Grand Prix. And Nib, in case we get a battle for the podium, a quick word on our race winner, Oscar Piastri. This was always a crucial race he had to win, and looks like he's got it.
Yep, crucial race win for Oscar. Capitalising on his good form at the moment, although he, quite frankly, didn't have to do an awful lot today, did he? He had a great start, and it won in the race. I mean, you can say that about a lot of first lap leaders just winning the race, but of course, with the penalty for Verstappen, made things a lot simpler.
Yeah, it has worked out in his favour, and Piastri has delivered, whilst others have not. Obviously, Lando cost himself in qualifying. Verstappen cost himself at the start. And all the others just weren't quick enough. As here comes Oscar Piastri to take McLaren's first win in Saudi Arabia. He took McLaren's first ever win in Bahrain last week. And like I said earlier, if you win the most races in a Formula 1 season, very rarely are you beaten for the championship. And he's now going to move on to 3 wins for the year, 2 clear of the next best driver. Oscar Piastri wins in Saudi Arabia for McLaren. Max Verstappen finishes second. And third, brilliant drive, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Ferrari's first podium of 2025. Lando Norris fourth. George Russell will finish in 5th. And then it will be Hamilton. Oh no, Antonelli 6th. Hamilton 7th. Sainz 8th. And then, well, we'll have to see Albon and Hadjar who finishes 9th. Because Albon has dropped over a second behind Sainz. He's lost the DRS unless Sainz slows down and lets Albon back within a second of him, because Hadjar is still right up behind him, and hopefully they'll cut to that battle. And here we go. Hadjar, he's going to have to send it, and he tries, but just too far back. And it will be Carlos Sainz 8th, Albon 9th, Isaac Hadjar 10th, and then Lawson, Alonso, Behrman, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Stroll, Doohan, and Bortoletto. The rest of your field and your retirements, Tsunoda and Gasly. So there you go, guys. That is your Saudi Arabian Grand Prix for 2025 in the books. And Piastri is now, as I said, your championship leader. Let me just ask you guys quickly, before we head off, who is your driver of the day for the Saudi Arabian GP? And the options will be Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris. I mean, technically, I've got to put him in there because he gained positions. Charles Leclerc, and I'll put Isaac Hadjar in there as well. I thought he had a decent race. But for me, driver of the day, Charles Leclerc. I thought from start to finish, he was absolutely on it. And that was Leclerc at his best today. The car still isn't quick enough to where, he needs to be. But at least he is performing at his highest level. The car just needs to get better. And I'm sure it will get at least a bit better at some point. Same for you, Nib, on the driver of the day?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Absolutely superb race by Leclerc. I mean, Norris did a good job coming through the field, but I think quite clearly Leclerc, driver of the day.
Yeah, and let's hope he keeps up this form, because if Ferrari do improve in a few races' time, maybe Leclerc will be regularly on the podium, or maybe even fighting for poles and wins. Ferrari are not, a million miles away from at least fighting for poles in 2025. They just need a bit more pace. As Oscar Piastri lines up on the grid in the P1 grid board. And yeah, he has won yet again. 3 wins in the last 4 races. He is the man in form this year, and he will be very tough to beat this season in the championship. Not just because of the car, but he is driving very, very well in that McLaren. But Max Verstappen will be disappointed with the penalty, but I think Max will be satisfied with this weekend. He's still in a good position championship-wise. He's only 12 points off the lead. So I think Max is satisfied championship-wise with where he's at. He knows that it surely will get better going forward. I think the 2 big losers today is Norris and Russell for the the championship, mainly Norris. But yeah, make sure to keep voting, guys, on that poll.
Here's a good stat for you.
Go on.
It's the first time the Cheyennes led the Drivers' Championship since Japan 2010.
And that was before the infamous race.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, which we spoke about earlier, so it's okay. But yes.
Yeah, it's 15 years ago. Just to make us feel old.
Yep, I've been watching this silly sport since then. Goodness me.
But yeah, Piastri absolutely deserves the lead of the championship. We said after the last race that it was mostly inevitable after, last week and the form Piastri's in compared to Norris. All Piastri had to do this weekend was win the race to get the lead of the championship. But even better, Lando did not make the podium. And yeah, Piastri has been absolutely brilliant. If you actually look, since the Chinese Grand Prix, Oscar has outscored Lando by, I think, 27 points since that Grand Prix. And to be fair, the only reason it's close is because Oscar didn't get his car going out of the grass in Melbourne. If he did, Oscar would probably be, 20 points clear or something. But that's the way it is. After 5 races, as we're now going to leave the Middle East, and the next Grand Prix, we'll head to North America for the Miami Grand Prix in a couple of weeks. As pretty close, the driver of the day vote, so I'll just wait a couple more minutes to see who wins that out. Sorry, Jazz Tastic says, did you hear him on the radio? Max wasn't happy. Yeah, he's not going to be. He wants to win. Maybe, maybe on a different day, if he didn't get the penalty but stayed ahead, maybe he somehow does win. But that's the way it went. And again, Max I don't think should be too disappointed, because he's still in a good position in the championship with the car he has. But I don't think Red Bull are going to be as good at the next Grand Prix. One, because as you said earlier, Nib, it's going to be hot, obviously, in Miami, and it'll be a day race, but also a lot more slow and medium speed corners in Miami. So I'd be surprised if Max is doing this well in a couple of weeks, unless Red Bull have some magical upgrade. Rooks has just said Alonso passed Lawson on the line. So Alonso has finished in 11th. Brilliant drive from him. And Alonso only a couple seconds away from a point, somehow, in that car. So it just shows you Fernando is doing a great job. Todd says Oscar had a great launch at the start. That's what won him the race. Absolutely. And then he, held the inside and didn't do anything wrong. Oh yeah, Lawson. I've just remembered now. You've said Rooks. Lawson had a 10-second penalty. But yeah, I still, we didn't see anything that was clear as to why he deserved a penalty. I don't remember seeing anything. Todd says that penalty screwed Max. He should have let Oscar by. I think if he had let Oscar by, I think for the entertainment of this race, that would have been better. But whether Max would have won or kept up, I don't know. I really don't know. Max did do a great job in that first stint to, have the pace that he had, but whether he would have won is a completely different story. Gaming Therapy says Hamilton should quit after this year. If he continues like this, wouldn't be surprised if he did, because that today was horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. I mean, I wasn't expecting miracles today, but I was not expecting to be that far off the pace compared to Leclerc. I thought, you know, especially given how quick Ferrari were towards the end compared to Mercedes. Like I said, Hamilton should have been 5th in that race, and he was nowhere near. So, yeah. Yeah, Lawson handed a 10-second penalty for leaving the track in a battle with Doohan. I'll have to try and find a replay of that, but I can't remember seeing that battle.
They definitely didn't show him going off track.
No. But I
Find it on Twitter.
think I will just about finish up the poll results. We've had about 80 votes, and just about by 42% of the vote, Charles Leclerc has won the Driver of the Day vote amongst you guys. 40% for Piastri, 12% for Norris, and 5% for Isaac Hadjar. Nib, thanks again for coming on. I know obviously this week you weren't supposed to come on, and thankfully things fell into place for you to come on. It's what, 5 a.m. is it in Melbourne?
Yeah, nearly. Yeah, 4:36 a.m.
God. So yeah, just thank you so much for coming on as well. I know you've been up for quite a while as well.
Sure have, but yeah, no, I'm glad I could come on because I definitely won't be on in Miami. I don't think. I think that's at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean, unless circumstances fall into place, then maybe, but probably not. But yeah, great to be on to watch another Oscar Piastri victory, and yeah, thanks for all the regulars: Astro, Rook, Serigara, all the regulars who are in the chat. Appreciate you, and yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you later.
Absolutely. Cheers, mate, for today. And in regards to Miami, by the way, guys, I just need to quickly let you know what the plan is for the next Grand Prix. The chances are that I will only be doing a qualifying watch along for the next Grand Prix in Miami. And the reason that is because normally the Miami Grand Prix is just guaranteed to be an awful race if it's dry. If, though, there is rain forecast for the race day in Miami, then I will do a race watch along. But if not, if it's a dry weekend, the plan is to only do a qualifying watch along for the Miami Grand Prix. And then the next Grand Prix weekend where we'll be doing a qualifying and race watch along will be 2 weeks after that at Imola, which is in about a month from now. So yeah, don't worry, that will return pretty quickly. But make sure to check out my podcast, which will be uploaded tomorrow morning, reviewing the events of this Grand Prix. And I will be uploading a video in this 2-week break between now and the Miami Grand Prix. I'll be uploading a video on the championship battle on the driver's side and the contenders and just how things are playing out so far and how I think things will play out going forward. Obviously, the 4 contenders are Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, and Russell. Yeah, I'll be uploading that during the break, and then obviously we'll get to the Miami Grand Prix in a couple weeks. Cheers for coming on, or coming, around obviously for the streams this weekend, guys. Much appreciated for, coming to all the streams. Obviously, the views have been very, very good. So, thank you for that. And if you are a new subscriber, hello to you. Welcome to the channel. If you are not subscribed, make sure to do so to keep up to date with everything going on in 2025. And before I go as well, make sure to smash that like button if you haven't already. Obviously, likes do show me that you guys are enjoying the content. But guys, yeah, that is it for this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend. Until my podcast tomorrow reviewing the weekend, and until my next stream in 2 weeks on Saturday, the 3rd of May, I think it will be, qualifying day in Miami for the qualifying watch-along for the Miami Grand Prix. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.